Welcome to the Portillo's Chocolate Cake Shake Power Hour. Welcome to the Portillo's Chocolate Cake Shake Power Hour. I'm one of your hosts, Magnum Mills, and we're here to talk about
Mills. That was a joke, bro. We're not actually doing that.
Well, we're not doing the PCC SPH.
The Portillo's Chocolate Cake Shake Power Hour?
Yeah, I wasn't talking about small penis humiliation.
Yeah, that's it. Totally not doing that. Still going to do the old Ozark podcast thing, though.
Dude, I watched like 3 YouTube videos to prepare for this, though.
I hear you, man. I had to watch 3 or 4 videos before being granted the title of Master of Surgical Arts.
Whatever, man. I just want a fucking milkshake with cake in it.
They've stolen people's businesses. They drag their kids into every part of the drug business. They've had people killed.
Do you honestly believe every story they've ever told you?
Do you really think everything you do is to protect your family? Are you really that fucking shut down?
Welcome to the Ozark Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G. Esquire the Fifth, Master of Surgical Arts. I'm here with my co-host, the main man, Magnum Mills. Mills, you know what we're going to do, bro? We're going to break down the series finale of the hit Netflix series Ozark. Millies, introduce yourself and get everyone ready for this episode to the best you can of the Ozark Podcast.
Thanks again for checking out the Ozark Podcast. We are going to get to the chocolate cake in the shake eventually. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like the video, drop a comment, same thing on your podcast platform. If you're listening, please rate the podcast, give us a comment. You can always send feedback to the OzarkPodcast at gmail.com. And considering the fact that this is the series finale, I think people might have, thoughts, and we're here to hear those thoughts. But on this episode, we're going to discuss the big one, the series finale titled A Hard Way to Go, which is episode 14 of season 4.
And please, everyone, know that this is 100% a spoiler podcast. And since we're talking about the series finale, screw it, dude. Everything is fair game for spoilers. All episodes of Ozark, interviews with the cast, crew, news articles, you name it. It is all in play as we break down A Hard Way to Go, the series finale of Ozark. Mills, hit us with the episode deets for the last time, bro, right here on the Ozark Podcast.
Oh, you're making me have a sad. And this is episode 14 of season 4, titled A Hard Way to Go, originally released April 29th, 2022, directed by Marty Byrde, Jason Bateman himself. This is the 10th episode of Ozark that he has directed. The last one was Civil Union, written by Chris Mundy. This is the 7th written by credit on Ozark for Mundy. The last was The Cousin of Death, and wow, Cousin of Death was my favorite episode, so definitely setting the bar a little high here. And the symbols we get on the title card are some broken glass, a coffee pot, a bow tie or some sort of bow, and a circular charcoal grill. The short plot synopsis is: every desperate deal, every broken promise, every bloody murder, eager to leave their murky past behind, the Byrdes make a final bid for freedom.
Wow, Mills. I mean, this is it. One last time. Let's do this, buddy. Let's break down an episode of Ozark.
Whew. And we open with Ruth, and she is just finishing burying Nelson's corpse in her soon-to-be pool under the supervision of Ghost Foreman Wyatt. Hey, they've done this before, right? Man Marty pulls up, and he's got nothing to lose, so he drops Ruth an ultimatum. She has to stop Joan and Charlotte from going to North Carolina, or he'll tell Camilla that Ruth killed Hobby. Marty figures that between Ruth killing Hobby, not letting them launder at the casino, and Ruth manipulating Jonah, this is her fault as much as his. As Marty leaves, Ruth asks, is this him or is this Wendy? Marty indicates that this is all him. Ruth and Ghost Wyatt watch Marty leave, and Ghost Wyatt gives him the bird.
One thing, Magnum Mills, and not to start off on a negative here, but we do have to be fair on the Ozark Podcast. One thing I didn't like about this, absolutely no mention of what they did with his Cadillac. We just never saw that whatsoever. We just don't know what happened. It was just Ruth just decided to
not to mention
ban
that thing should be low jacked. and they should know that, at least be able to tell that the last place it went, even if they pull that, is the Langmore place. So yeah, you would think, the cartel probably has an interest in that. Even if it was a rental, I'm sure they could somehow get the data from the rental company. So right there, that's kind of a strike one that, all right, they can't find Nelson. Like, how hard have they looked? And not to mention, Marty's pulling up there and we see the workers are there and they're literally getting ready to pour the cement in the pool, and Ruth is still down there burying the body. Did those dudes not look? Did they just start mixing the cement and getting ready to, no one bothered to look, make sure there's no debris or an animal or a person sleeping in there or anything? I don't know. And no one bothers to ask her what she's doing.
Yeah, what she's in there, like why is she covered in blood? The other thing is, the other thing, it was completely flat. When you bury anything, right, there's going to be a tiny mound, especially the more you dig. And in order to dig a human, I imagine she had to go at least 3 feet. That's shallow.
Yeah, the displaced dirt has to go somewhere in theory.
So, and she's not getting it out of this pool because she's at the bottom of a 8-foot thing. So a lot of kind of things that make you scratch your head here, Magnum Mills, right off the bat.
You love a good Marty and Ruth scene, so I don't want to hate too much. I think the one thing that I didn't quite pick up on it, but it seems to be more apparent in this episode, is like, does Ruth really have this degree of control over Jonah? I mean, I guess he's like in love with her or something is kind of implied. And I don't know, I might have picked up a little like schoolboy crush vibes, but I never thought it was like he worships at her altar or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like, hey, she has all the control over getting them to do whatever they want. I think what the show was trying to do was point out that like the parents have lost complete authority over the kids in terms of, and not even that, just their ability to like get them to believe them anymore, and like listen to them and come with them. So I in the last place you go, I guess, is, well, I mean, shit, I guess Jonah's been living at the Lazy O for a while. I think that's where they were trying to go. Do I love it? No, but I think that's where they were trying to go. One thing that was cool with this, though, Marty's quote of, "Did you get enough mud on you?" And I think that's a direct reference to the title from last episode, Mud. Again, I can't say that without being from Alabama. Mud. And not so subtle reference, Magnum Mills. It was a reference to Mud, the last episode, and a not so subtle reference to the fact that Ruth is already having trouble staying clean. I do like that. After her big to-do with the judge, I'm going to stay clean for you forever, no matter what. Homegirl is a little dirty.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, you get the irony here that she's building her foundation, the pool. The first thing already has a body buried in it. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's, again, the metaphor there. Like, even her new place is being built on the bones of this deal with the cartel or whatever. So I think, again, some more metaphor there. There were a couple fun exchanges, as there always are, between Marty and Ruth. Like when Ruth's like,
"You're really willing to get me killed."
I didn't shoot Javi.
And then this is the part that bothers me a little bit, because, Marty eventually does come around to more or less blaming Ruth. But first, when she asks, she's like, "And why am I responsible for your family?" Marty's like, "Because I don't know what else to do." And then it kind of occurs to him, I guess, to turn around and blame it on Ruth. And, he does get the one good line in where Ruth's like,
"And what if he doesn't listen to me?"
I don't know, fucking kidnap him. Kill Wendy's dad. I don't give a fuck what you do, but if my kids get in that van and they go to North Carolina, I'm telling Javi's mom everything.
Like, just shout out, because Bateman delivered that line just like Ruth delivers her lines to him. Where Ruth's like, "I don't know, y'all can fuck off." That's the same way Marty said that. Like, "I don't know, fucking kidnap him. Figure it out." So good. It's hard to ever really have a bad time in a Marty and Ruth scene. It just kind of, I don't know, getting a little bit of an awkward start to the episode, I think.
Yeah, there was. And the other thing too is I would have completely lost the over under or any form of betting when it came to A, Wyatt coming back, and B, Wyatt and Ruth getting one more body to bury, bro. Bury me a G. Shout out Thug Life. Pour out a little liquor. A bunch of good tracks on that one. But Magnum Mills, I would have lost that bet.
Bury me smiling with G's in my pocket. If a party at my funeral that ever wrap a rocket, let the hoes that I used to know from way before kiss me from my head to my toe. Give me a paper and pen so I can write about my life of sin. A couple of bottles of gin in case I don't get in. All right, tell all you people, I'm a rider. Nobody cry when I die.
Absolutely spot on with that. After the title card, we're with Wendy Bird. it's hard to tell if she's bored or troubled as she runs out the clock here in the behavioral mental institution. This has left Marty to deal with Camellia by himself, and we see him serving her coffee while updating her on the current situation. He reads her in on the financials and explains the FBI's plan for transferring Omar, giving Camellia a chance to take him out. Camellia responds that she will not make a deal until she meets with the FBI face to face. Marty remarks that her brother once said the same thing, and Camellia acknowledges that Omar was a good boss. Marty tells her that the meeting has been set, and she asks again Magnum Mills about the day Javi died. Marty tells the truth up to going to dinner with Claire, but lies about everything after that. He asks Camellia if she's having second thoughts, and she quickly says no. Is it just me, Magnum Mills, or have we known for kind of, well, since she found out that Omar didn't kill Javi, that she was just not going to let this go, right? I mean, the show in a way is kind of making it like somewhat nonchalant. Like you would think like this would be a big deal and the cartel would be swarming and trying to, but you also get the feeling that every time she's around, she's not letting this go.
And I was actually going to bring this up a little later on because it's something they actually do a good job of continuing this throughout the episode. Is she's doing effective interrogation here. She keeps asking everyone to repeat their story and hammering them on the details because she's trying to see if whose story changes, whose stories match up, that kind of thing. So I actually think this is actually very effective and pretty, goddamn solid, interrogation / detective work by Camellia, I think.
Yeah, and I like how she starts right off with Marty. I mean, Marty's got to lie for both where his kids are and also where Wendy is. I mean, Wendy's
when he's like, when she's not there and she's like, oh, we said we're going to divide and conquer. Then like Camilla's like, so what is this? Am I being divided or am I being conquered?
Yeah, I mean, she starts poking at him a little bit here, and she's tough, dude. I mean, in her own way. To your point, she does a really good job kind of putting the spotlight on you a little bit and making sure, you got to stay on your toes when communicating with her. And actually any cartel boss, not that I've ever communicated with one, and I hope I never do, but I would imagine that you got to be on your toes when communicating with cartel boss. So I like that portion of what Camellia is doing there.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for the scene. I did like how they showed that Wendy is laying awake when everyone else is still sleeping. It's just a running theme on the show, especially this season. Nobody ever sleeps. It makes sense. It is the cousin of death.
One last thing there is just the coffee pot tie back into the title card.
Yeah, we actually see the two versions of it. Wendy's getting some at the joint and Camilla's getting it served by Marty. So pretty sure that's the reference from the title card. After that, we just go back to the hospital and Ruth arrives to see Wendy. And I'm really shocked here because I was positive their final showdown would be in a parking lot, but apparently it's going to happen here. So advantage Ruth. She's got Wendy off her home turf. Ruth tells Wendy that if Ruth takes care of her end and prevents Jonah and Charlotte from going with Nathan, that has to be good enough. She can't force them to stay with Wendy. As long as Ruth does the thing, Wendy promises she'll abide by Ruth giving her best effort. Ruth remarks to Wendy that her dad is a real piece of shit, by the way, and that she's sorry. Wendy responds by telling Ruth that she's sorry about her father. Ruth tears up a bit and asks how bad it really is in there. Wendy says bad, but Ruth counters that it's bearable. Wendy says everything is bearable. That leads Ruth to say that Wendy was right. If she just left Ben there, he'd still be alive. With that thought, Ruth departs.
I was kind of split. I was a little Natalie Bruglia on this scene here, a little torn, because on one hand, it's like, okay, I guess it worked, right? Wendy going into the same exact place that she had been, committed to. It got somebody to kind of feel sad and sorry, and it worked in getting her closer to someone or something that she needed. I didn't necessarily think it would be Ruth. I'm not upset about it being Ruth, but I'm just kind of like, there was so much hate between those two. And then just to suddenly see them so civil, it was somewhat kind of like, wow. I mean, I wish there would have been like one scene somewhere over the last like episode or two that bridged them just a little softer. This would have been a little bit more realistic for me than just kind of, having it be like this.
Yeah.
I mean, Ruth went from not caring anyone finds out about what happened with Javi to now being like terrified. And it just happened like Ruth had all the hand with like not worrying about with jack shit with the cartel. I'm not going to launder. I'm not going to do what they say. I don't care. Yes, I killed Javi. Who cares? To now all of a sudden she's like a simple threat from Marty and she's like, shit in her pants. It just was like letting Wendy kind of win a little bit here with like admitting it's kind of thinking it's her fault what happened with Ben, when clearly, obviously it's Wendy's.
like more scenes than I care to really talk about right now in this episode. If you start thinking about this falls apart a bit, because what if Wendy doesn't promise? What changes? What is Ruth just going to let Marty tell Camilla then? She still has to try. This was just so that they had this scene. I like the scene. Obviously, I think it makes I think what they're going for here is the idea that now that Ruth has interacted with Nathan, she has some sympathy for Wendy because she had, also not the world's greatest father and kind of a troubled upbringing, that kind of thing. You could say maybe the loss of Ben to Wendy is comparable to her losing Wyatt. I can see what the show is trying to make us think here, but their tone together is just way too civil for where they left things, with basically neither one of them caring if the other died. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it would have made sense if Ruth she'd been in the car accident, had near-death experience or something. You know what I mean? Made her come back around a little bit. So I don't know. And then at the end too, you want to believe like, oh, maybe Wendy's changed, but at the end, she has the chance to tell Ruth, oh yeah, it's not your fault about Ben if she doesn't fucking do it. She definitely has a chance to show even lingers and waits. And it takes a minute for Ruth to get the buzzer for the door, and Wendy's looking and you're waiting and she just doesn't say it. And yeah, that definitely speaks a bit to me that still, even though I think this episode is trying to get us to think that maybe Wendy Bird has really changed, I'm pretty skeptical of that.
Yeah, and I think and that's one thing I will give the show credit for, and we'll talk about this as we end up, getting to that final scene. They did a good job, just because these are, terrible people, it doesn't mean that, they can't get out of shit. And they kind of did that throughout the entire series, but here too, like Wendy wants her cake and to eat it too. And it doesn't matter that you kind of felt bad for her for a second and there was some bonding and made it seem like a human. It's still so I think they did a good job of kind of staying true to that throughout. And this is kind of one of those small, references to showcase that a little bit. From there, Magnum Mills, we are back.
I just wanted to point out, you're teasing me with this cake and eat it too, because I want to have my cake and drink it too. I'm just saying.
Yes,
do not deny me the drinking of the cake.
The cake shake.
Everything's bearable except for me not getting this cake shake. So
gotta have the chocolate cake shake. No diggity, no doubt.
And yeah, just real quick, Davey G, before we move on, I just want to mention this because, you got to get at least one good Ruth one-liner in a scene with Wendy Bird. Yeah, I just love when she says,
If they don't want to be with you, I can't control that. So, if I keep my end, you'll tell Marty to call off narco bitch.
Just the way she said narco bitch, it's like when she called Wendy bitch wolf, direct flashbacks of that. So I want the video game, narco bitch versus bitch wolf. Somebody make that.
Oh, please. Someone make it. We will buy it.
Like old school Double Dragon style or something, like a side scroller, 8-bit, nothing fancy. Do it up, please.
From there, we are back at the Lazy O. We see Ruth watching Jonah and Charlotte talk about the upcoming Bird fundraiser. Ruth gets out of her car and she goes to the office. She gets a gun out of the safe and a bottle of booze. She heads to Nathan's room and asks him to have a drink with her before he leaves town. Despite it being a bit early, Nathan agrees for a bet. It doesn't take much time or many drinks for Nathan to admit to Ruth that he just wanted custody of Jonah and Charlotte to stick it to Wendy. Ruth responds by pointing her gun at him and firing a warning shot. She tells him that when Jonah and Charlotte come to the room, he has to tell them exactly what he just told her. Right after that, Jonah and Charlotte come bursting in the room, demanding to know what's going on.
Oh, and the one nice note before we get really into it, like you hear Jonah talking about like, oh, I don't really want to go to the gala, and Charlotte's like,
it's okay if part of you wishes we were going.
Like you could tell, and this is kind of again they're playing it. I think Jonah wanted to get dressed up nice and impress Ruth or something. I think that's what they were going for
there. And I think they were also kind of teasing us with this family togetherness that we don't know we're going to get yet. Jonah kind of inquiring, like, are you going to go? You spent so much time helping, and like you just kind of start to. I think it's a little bit of a dick tease there for the family coming together.
And I guess one thing to point out, like we see, Ruth at the knocking on the door, and then they go inside. When they first cut to the table, that was a full bottle that Ruth's showing. There's about a third of it left when the scene starts, and you see Nathan refill his 2-3 times. He does pour a little bit into Ruth's glass, but right when we get to this scene, they've already been sitting there for a minute. Either that,
they've had some
2/3
drinks.
of a bottle of looks to be some sort of whiskey or bourbon in about 90 seconds. So let's go. Sitting there for 20 minutes, half hour, at least something like that, probably before we get to what happens. And
I hope so, because 20 minutes of drinking a half a bottle.
I do have some problems with how this confrontation went down, unfortunately.
I think it's probably closer to an hour. I mean, drinking a half a bottle of whiskey and
He finishes the last third
20
in about
minutes.
4 minutes, so that puts about a 12-minute pace for the bottle.
I mean, that's ham
took.
bone, dude. But anyways, I digress.
One thing that would have went way better is if somehow Ruth got the initial confession in front of Jonah and Charlotte. The idea that they're going to buy a confession from Nathan while Ruth has a gun pointed at him. Does that make any sense?
No, not really.
Why would they buy that? I mean, that's their grandpa. As far as they know, they might not be the best guy, but Ruth's pointing a fucking gun at him. She just fired a shot. Why would they believe her over Nathan there, I guess? And they don't show any of that either. Like, that's the one thing. If you're going to do that, then you probably can't yada yada the rest of that scene. I need to know how they accepted that. It would have made more sense for her to record it or have them secretly listening in on call or something like that. Listening at the fucking door with a cup with a glass in their ear to the door, old school style. It didn't make sense the way it went down. And let's be honest, was Ruth ever going to really shoot Nathan in cold blood right there?
Not in the
Especially
lazy-o.
and in front of his grandkids. Think about that.
Way.
When Charlotte and Jonah come in the room, there's zero chance Ruth is going to shoot their grandpa in front of them. Zero fucking chance, right? Yeah. So what was her leverage at that point?
None. And look, clearly the only good part about this scene was the dialogue between Nathan and Ruth, the setup. And here's the thing, I think that we find the majority of the exchange
is great between them. I love all that. Just the actual plotting part of it makes zero fucking sense. The actual scene between the two of them is fucking great.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately we're as we dive into this even deeper, Magnum Mills, I think that's going to be a runner for us with this episode, and it's kind of been this way throughout kind of the back seven here of season 4, where it's just kind of, I get it, I like it, but the way they got there doesn't, the background, the beef, it's like somebody took a real easy way out and they're like, oh shit, we forgot we had to have this deadline. Now we got like 2 weeks to do it, so we're just gonna it just feels like it was rushed. I'm gonna say that. I did like the dialogue between the two.
Oh,
and I like that
Ruth, you can tell right away Ruth is playing to him too. Like she's figured out, okay, this is how I have to do it, because he's being condescending as fuck right away.
Oh, he's being an asshole. Yeah,
is like, oh, how did my son?
So what was it about you that got Ben over the blonde hump anyway?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't even think that's a real thing. That's probably just something Nathan made up to make himself feel closer to Ben or something. That's how I feel. And then
what's so stupid about that is Nathan, his wife Annalise is blonde. That's what I hate about
it.
This.
And I think that's the idea. Is just again trying to get his self-loathing and everything out there. That's he's living a life that's not really who he wants to be, kind of thing. And that's decent subtext by the show. And I think the other thing is here, dude, this guy's like a raging alcoholic in this, but we got no indication of this until like an episode and a half ago at most. It just seems a little bit out of left field that all of a sudden this dude is like willing to not only day drink, but pound at least probably over half a bottle of whiskey very quickly while day drinking. That's not, that's alcoholic level. You just don't do that. Like, even if you're a fairly, mod, you drink a couple times a week, have some beers, whatever, a heavy social drinker, that you don't do that. Like, you just,
I mean, put it this way, neither Magnum Mills or Jamie G is going to just randomly polish a bottle of whiskey at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday
inside of like 2 hours tops.
Yeah, it's not happening, dude. Well, look, dialogue was good. What becomes is good, but so many problems with how they got there. I think we can both agree on that. In the next scene, we see that Wendy's play seems to have worked as Jonah and Charlotte go to visit her at the mental institution. Jonah is especially skeptical here, and even Charlotte says that just because they're there doesn't mean they're coming home. Wendy talks about what Ruth said about Ben and tells them that Ruth was wrong. It was Wendy's fault, all of it. She doesn't know what more she could have done, but they should have never been in that spot in the first place. Ben is dead because of Wendy shouldn't have never invited Ben to stay with them. She wanted to believe things could be different. She also admits that she kept Ben around because she was mad at Marty and she wanted to prove that she was in control. Not only that, she's been trying to control Jonah and Charlotte. They need to do whatever they're going to do. And Wendy makes that really clear. She also promises not to trap them in the family business. Wendy wants them to stay, but if they want to go, they should. She will love them just as much either way. this seems to have an impact on the Bird children here, Magnum Mills. I think this is the first time since any of this shit went down and the kids have been involved in this that Wendy got real with them. This is like a time to get real with the real world. Like this was one of those moments. Like she finally got real with them.
You're
Shout out
bad
92.
boys.
David should have never got kicked off, man.
Yeah, you're looking for bad boys here. You want to be the both being like, yo, Martin Lawrence being like, yo.
Shit just got real.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. There's a point when Wendy's doing the whole teary-eyed thing, and you kind of catch her and she looks at Jonah, kind of sneaks the glance. She looks, and that's when she does, and that was all bullshit. It's all a sell. She's selling it from the beginning, and she sees that the teary-eyed thing isn't working, so she shifts tactics. I think that's the only problem is I think this is the show.
But she told the truth, though.
She told the truth, but she only told the truth because it was tactically her only move.
Yes.
She tried the other way. It didn't work. It's not like she told the truth out of the goodness of her heart or because she really wanted them to know that about her. She was just out of options. It's like when they were trapped in traffic, she decided to go up. It was the only way out of it to take that, the Wonka glass elevator there or what have you. In this case, it was the truth and it worked. And I really liked the scene, but I watched the scene multiple times here. And I couldn't quite figure out if the show wants us to think that she's telling the truth or not. And part of the problem is I think they want it to be ambiguous. They're doing the prestige TV thing where it's a little bit shades of gray. And I would have liked it to either known for sure that this is still Wendy being Wendy, or maybe she actually did connect with her kids for once. I'm leaning with her being manipulative, but I think you can read the scene either way.
You're not necessarily wrong, dude. I see it both ways. I think the thing that bothered me too, just a little bit, is that now this is twice, okay, with both of the main thorns in Wendy's side here, so to speak, regarding her personal life is Ruth. That's personal and business. She gets what she wants there with Ruth coming in, kind of tucking her tail between her legs and obliging. And now she's getting what she wants with her kids. So her checking herself into this thing has worked for her. This whole thing
paying off some passive aggressive bullshit that should not have
is,
really
and these are
this
two.
well.
But bro, these are two major things. Like we even said right here on the Ozark podcast that like Jonah is straight up done with Wendy. It doesn't matter. Are you telling me that this was really enough to get him totally back? That Ruth was never, we said it on the Ozark podcast, she was never going to do anything to help Wendy. Doesn't matter what it was. Now all of a sudden, like, in a way, I'm bummed that this became like a storyline with her in the mental hospital and it working and solving two huge things that seemed unsolvable in both Ruth doing something for her and her children respecting her, loving her, getting them back, whatever you want to say. Two major things that did not seem like they would happen, and they just happened. Just boom, just because she checked herself into this hospital and she told a little bit of the truth. Does it work for you, Magnum Mills, or am I out on left field here?
It gets even worse if you really think about it. This is the plot device they used to get them all happy into that van together. And also, like, I guess, Wendy was there of her own, but still, I'm not sure if she gets to just walk out of there as cleanly as she did with Marty just kind of waiting in the park. I felt like Marty was just waiting in the parking lot for 15 minutes. Or Charlotte and Jonah go in, do their thing, and then Wendy and the kids come out, and bada bing, bada boom, Bob's your uncle. It's just here.
And I think that's what makes me like the saddest about this is like, damn, dude, it's just so. It seems like it's been a theme where we've been like, okay, well, I'll just kind of believe that, I'll kind of buy it, but man, they've run out of those bullets with me and those silver bullets, and I'm at a loss here. Like so much stuff is just not realistic and believable.
This is again something that I think the show did for dramatic impact. It didn't come back around to anything, but remember the couple episodes when we had the cold open with Ben? And he talked to Nelson about telling Wendy that he forgave her and all this stuff. I think it's pretty obvious here that Wendy never got that message. And I think it would have made, if she had gotten that message, at least I think that would have given her some motivation for making a character change here. And it's just another thing that I wanted something to come of it. Nothing did. And that's driving me a little bit nuts here. We'll kind of see that going throughout the episode. Again, great dialogue here. I just will say that I think the most real line Wendy said was, I want you to stay so much it makes my teeth hurt, which is a really weird line, but it gave me New Jack City flashbacks. So
I want to shoot you so bad. My dick's hard.
It was a really weird line, and I literally laughed at it. And I think that was what the the intention of the line was, but just yeah, it reminds me of something Ice-T said in New Jack City. Let's just put it that way.
From there, my dude, we see Marty is just catching a little snooze, waiting in the minivan, and Charlotte, Jonah, and Wendy climb in. Marty and Wendy smile at each other, and Bring It On Home to Me by Sam Cooke starts playing. I mean, holy shit, dude. This is it. We're finally getting the car accident from the flash forward scene in the first episode, right? First episode of season 4, the beginning of the end. Everything plays out exactly the same. Marty drifts into the wrong lane. He's glancing into the back seat. He's forced to swerve to avoid an oncoming truck, and the minivan loses control, flips over roughly 6.5 times here. Finally, I mean, with serious arc and height, that thing was 8 to 10 feet in the air on that first flip. Finally comes to a stop on the edge of the woods. Unbelievably here, Magnum Mills. Unbelievably. All of the birds seem to be no worse for the wear, despite Wendy giving Marty a little scare. And all of us for a brief second watching that.
Wow.
I'm going to just take a deep breath here because before I unload on the scene, I'm going to...
All I can say is this has been the Ozark Podcast. Thank you for watching. I'm Magnum Mills. He's Jamie G. And that was a show, right? I mean, if we're going to go by what we said when we first saw this flash forward, one of our big things we had and our predictions for this was like, people do not walk away from this fucking accident unharmed. Just no. Just, and I watched this scene at 0.1 speed. Like, I slowed this down to a 1/10 of normal speed. And yeah, dude, we do see that they're all buckled in. I'll give them that. But holy shit, dude.
There's no way. There's no, talk about, this has got to be the most egregious, the balls of this show. I mean, how could they do this to us and just have all of them are fine? A split-second scare with Wendy. We don't have a concussion. We don't got a goddamn scrape. We're just going to catch an Uber and go home the next scene. Are you kidding me?
It was actually a real
how did the van not even get, how did it not blow up? This is insane. The van was fine.
Yeah, right.
What is that thing?
A TV show that, yeah, the car would definitely have exploded from this. You kidding me? Usually it hits a, like, you know,
yes!
It bumps into a street sign and it explodes. Honestly, dude, the car crash, it went on for so long. I thought they were gonna do the Talladega Night thing. They cut halfway through to an Applebee's commercial. I was just waiting for it after about the 5th flip. I mean, dude, this is just I want to look at the writers and you know what, and just say, you know what, guys, fuck you for my, like, how dare you question my intelligence and do this to me? You open up, you make the decision to open season 4, the final season, with this scene, and we wait until the last episode 14. We wait until the last episode, not a goddamn whisper of it for 14 episodes. And now all of a sudden, this is how they pay it off. I don't care if this was the greatest episode ever. If this element was part of it, I would be mad about. Like, I can't look the other way on this, Magnum Mills. I am so mad about this. Yeah, and we literally said on our, if somehow this was just everyone walks away from this and it doesn't mean anything, we were gonna be pissed. There is one good thing to come of all this, though. It's a little good news in that this Ozark finale actually has ended the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. President Zelensky, he saw this and he made a decision. And he said, you know what? We're going to switch from tanks to Honda minivans. And since then, they've had a casualty rate of 0%. Nobody can fucking die in these things.
Yeah, they're absolutely death proof, dude. I mean, I'm waiting for Quentin Tarantino to make a remix. Another movie. Do
an additional movie just so we can do Death Proof 2 with the Honda minivan. 100% lock it in after this.
Incredible. And I just, again, man, I just can't with this scene, dude. And the worst part about it is they didn't even need the scene. If this wasn't in this episode, would you have even missed it? Not at all.
You have to change like 3 pieces of dialogue in the next scene, and that's it. It has no impact on the show. Not even minimal impact. Zero. I mean, a little bit of the conversation about God and destiny, like between Father Benitez and Wendy. That's fucking it. You could get rid of it otherwise. It was purely there for show to get us sucked in and talking about it. That's fucking hacky writing. Maybe something happened behind the scenes and they had to go this way. But even when this happened, I'm doing the thing like, like with the stages of denial, and I'm trying to justify this. I'm like, all right, what can happen here? And I came up in my head, like, what would be cool? Remember when they just like wrote Sheriff Guerrero off randomly? I'm like, what if this is like where she is now, and she's the one who comes up to the crash and like sets something up or whatever? I was thinking, oh, that'll be cool. Nope, no police. And you know what? No Sheriff Guerrero. That show really just wrote her off randomly, no reason. I hope she's having fun with Poochie on their home planet or whatever.
Well, she would be the only one having fun here. This just makes me so mad. I can't believe that they were okay with this when they were in final, writing. Like, how could they not have done? Like, they knew when they opened up the season with this. If they really were that desperate to catch people on, then okay, they knew they had a shitty season. Because, dude, the show's super popular. Whether that happened in episode 1 of season 4 or not, I was in for the ride. I wanted to see how it didn't matter what they did. I wanted to see how the show was happening. They didn't, I needed to see the story end. They didn't need to do that if they weren't going to deliver something with it. This is one of the worst, I'm going to say it, this is one of the worst bits of writing and plot togetherness that I have ever had to watch on a show that I was this into. I mean, this makes me question everything. Like, man, at one point I was grading these things so high. This was clean money for us on the Ozark podcast. I love this show. This one scene and what they did with this, it has me rethinking it, Magnum Mills. It was that bad for me.
Well, think about it this way. Take the flash forward out of play. If this had just happened in this episode with no context, it would have been absolutely fucking terrible. Like, why would they do this? The fact that they took a scene that didn't even matter and showed us it 13 episodes ahead of time, a nothing burger, dude.
It's
and this isn't like a little
unthinkable.
It literally made me want. I started creating scenarios in my head where like, okay, they all died, and the rest of the episode is a dream or a coma dream by like Marty or something. That's what I came up with because that feels more satisfying to me than all of them surviving. Honestly, had Wendy just died, that would have been fine. I wouldn't say it was worth it. I wouldn't have loved that after all this, Wendy seems to be happy and she dies in a car crash, but that would have at least been ironic.
That would have been more satisfying than this.
So I'm not, shout out Laura Linney. You did great work and everything, but holy shit, dude. And they all walk away fine. There's no way you're being held overnight for observation.
Yeah, dude, at the least.
I've been trapped in a burning building. I've been in car accidents. Especially if you have insurance, they don't let you out of the fucking hospital. You have to sign like 8 different waivers to get out. And even then, it takes a while.
Yeah. They didn't even go to the hospital. It was still light. It was still daytime.
Yeah, you're getting the idea that they just like called a cab and walked up to the highway and got the cab, right? That's almost, they didn't even bother. Like, oh, we'll get a new car.
I don't know, man. I can't
put a white shirt in the window or whatever and leave it. It's fine.
I'm going to say that this is unforgivable. I'm just going to say this is unforgivable. What they did.
I was half joking about starting the outro after this, but there is definitely a world where, man, this is just, we even said that this has to have consequence. That was a sticking point for us, and it is absolutely 100% inconsequential, which is, it would be unforgivable on its own. The fact that they teased this 13 episodes ahead of time, even if the only even semi-acceptable answer is we find out a couple of years from now some behind the scenes shit, like they were supposed to be a 5th season and they got cut short or something happened, and the network's executives went above and had like a third party edited in there or something without telling the creatives. That's about the only thing I'm just trying to grasp at anything because I love the show. Yeah, and it was a show that always got better as time went on. And when we got that, the Cousin of Death Man episode 8, I was like, here we go. This is the peak of their powers. And I feel like every episode from there gets worse. And that's just, yeah, dude, it's, you don't want to spend forever on it, but we're going to go into the next scene. And I think in this next scene, it's the writers basically saying like, oh, y'all need to chill the fuck out, Ruth Langmore style. Anything else before we go on? I don't want to.
No, I think I said my
family.
Piece
Is the family dead if they died on the 5th flip or whatever?
Yes. Yeah. That first contact, they died. That first.
You don't even leave in the video game after that. That's well, after that, the perfectly fine, barely a scratch on them family arrives back at the birdhouse to find Father Benitez waiting for them. Marty explains that they just got into a little bit of a car accident, and Benitez reminds Wendy and Marty that Navarro wants to see them. And he also tells them that Nelson is missing. Marty says that's not a problem. He just has to run a quick errand first. Father Benitez remarks that it's not healthy to be around death so much. He asks Wendy how many times God has to point at her before she takes notice. He thinks that the car accident was her last warning. However, Wendy sees it as an assurance that they will most definitely make it out alive. Dude, right at the beginning, they pull up in the cab. Father Benitez is like, "Is everything okay?" Marty's like,
Yeah. Just got in a little bit of a car accident.
Well, but you were all unharmed.
Well, we're a bit bruised. We're a little jumpy, but we're okay.
"Fuck you, show. Seriously? Like, that is just the writers just being like, this is the way we went. Y'all need to chill the fuck out about it because this is what we're doing. This is just the thing." It's like it's starting to bleed over too, because when Father Benitez tells Marty and Wendy about Nelson being gone, and Marty's like, "How is Nelson missing? Like, how? What do you mean fucking how? Nelson is missing. Why would you ask fucking how?" I guess you give him credit that he was like, Nelson missing, Ruth in the pool. He put 2 and 2 together real quick there. And the one thing that didn't make a ton of sense to me here is when you get the exchange between Father Benitez and Wendy, you get the idea that at the end, Wendy really is like, "I am fucking invincible. Like, if I got everything I wanted, I handled Ruth, I got the kids back, I survived this car accident, I am in fucking invincible." And, Father Benitez tries to be like, "Oh, you're lying to yourself." And Wendy's like, "Nah, you're overreaching again." At this point, am I wrong? Like, you get the sense that Wendy thinks she's invincible here, but you don't really get that sense throughout the rest of the episode. So I don't know. And again, did you get that kind of impression I did with the writers giving a little bit of a flipping you the bird here?
Yes, but I don't know, man. I think they've kind of beat this whole individual religion thing to death with both Marty and, I get the reason why they want the character Father Benitez and whatnot, and they flashed him, in season 3 and then, in the first part of season 4, but I think it's overkill at this point. Like, I get it. Like, they've each had their own individual conversation with Father Benitez. They've said their piece. Like, do we really need another one?
It's a little bit, on the nose to have. I would like it more if somehow the religion aspect really came back around full circle, and I just don't know that it does.
From there, we see Marty heading over to the future Langmore estate and asks Ruth if Nelson is in the bottom of her pool. Ruth hesitates, and Marty knows that he is. Ruth says that it's not his problem, but Marty reminds her that it is. Nelson's disappearance has Omar on edge. However, Omar will be out of the picture soon, so Ruth should be safe. But if she doesn't believe Marty, he's got the name of a PI who can give her a brand new identity. She's got money and she could start clean. Ruth replies that she likes her name. Marty tells Ruth that they all have to meet with the FBI tomorrow. Ruth has to be there, and she must confirm to the FBI that she will allow the cartel to launder money through the casino. Marty assures her that it's not a crime if the FBI is sanctioning it. Ruth isn't thrilled, but she's always got time for her fucking government. Love that line. Marty tells her that Charlotte and Jonah are back home and thanks Ruth for her help. Ruth jokes with Marty and seems to be genuinely happy that Charlotte and Jonah came home. We love, as we've said, we love a good Marty and Ruth scene, don't we, Magnum Mills? But boy, oh boy.
Another one here, I guess Marty has kind of replaced Wendy in the parking lot pimping aspect of the episode. He's kind of, although I guess he's, going up to Ruth's door and everything. Just great dialogue back and forth. I do say that when Marty's like, "It's all my fucking problem, Ruth. You are always my problem." I don't know that Ruth was always his problem. I think she's been his problem, but she's also been his solution. I think that those columns are probably about equally balanced, I would think.
Yeah. And the other thing too, dude, is like they went from being like not enemies, but clearly not working together. And now all of a sudden Marty's just telling her some super high level shit that she's really doesn't.
Well, there's two things here. A, they're blabbing to, it seems like they'll tell everyone, "Oh, don't worry about Navarro." Like, they're telling way too many people about that. And then
right.
B, he does the whole thing with this. And then after the Nelson thing, he's like, "Oh yeah, and tomorrow you need to meet with the FBI and resume laundering." Really? Like, you didn't take care of that until now? What was he going to do if the Nelson disappearance thing going up? Just shoot her a text, be like, "Hey, Ruth, can you show up tomorrow and meet with the FBI, please?" Because Ruth's basically been like, "Fuck you" on the money laundering.
Yeah,
It's a big ask
1000%.
at this point for all of a sudden Marty's just going to show up. They have a little bit of a fun exchange, and Marty's like, "Oh, the FBI says it's fine. Don't worry about it." And then Ruth will be like, "Okay, sure, Marty, whatever you say." It just doesn't track,
bro. It is a flip of the proverbial table. It is Mac flipping the imaginary table. Like, dude,
that's why I got to nail the board to the table.
Yes. I have a huge problem with this because, again, they made such a big deal out of the last 2 episodes since Ruth went down to Florida and got Rachel and brought her back. Like, they've made such a big deal with like Ruth drawing the line in the sand. We will not launder. It doesn't matter if it's okay with anyone. Not going to be okay with me. I will never be dirty again. Blah, blah, blah. I don't shit where I eat. Now all of a sudden, oh, totally cool. Hello. The FBI's been there the entire time. Hello. Javi's mom's been there the entire time. Now all of a sudden Ruth just magically cares about either of those 2 plot lines. A lot doesn't work with it, man.
Just doesn't make a ton of sense in how they arrived at the outcomes they arrive at, basically. I'll say one thing when Ruth says,
I always got time for my fucking government.
The army, I know you're having trouble with recruitment and stuff. The Ruth Langmore, that's your solution right there, baby. Just get her some recruitment ads. She'll fill the fucking government up in no time.
I always got time for it. Loved again.
The way they both say, like,
lines.
when in Ruth's like,
The fucking FBI.
The fucking FBI.
Even, when it's seen that a lot of problems with, again, like, you're right, just the chemistry between the characters, the actors is great, dialogue's great. It's just a shame that I don't like where the dialogue goes from a plot.
Well, one thing I did think that the show did here was they started kind of planting the seeds that Ruth was going to be the one who died. And this was kind of that first scene, right? Where that first big seed where it was kind of like, okay, Marty gives her a way out. He's got a random PI, and our producer did go back and track this. The random PI can create false identities. Marty found him back, we think, in season 2. So that actually tracks, which is cool. So good work to our production crew and the man Magnum Mills himself here. But I gotta say, dude, this was kind of that first, like, the clue, if you're watching, that it's going to be Ruth. And she had a way out, and I did love her line. I like my name. And Marty saying, I do too. But it was kind of that first little clue where it's like, okay, here's your way out of all this. Just take this false identity and run, call the vacuum cleaner, Breaking Bad style, and go and get out of here. But man, there's no way she was going to do it. And it just seems so abrupt too. Like, hey, if you don't trust me now after, 4 years of me telling you all this crazy shit, I got this PI. Like,
yeah, shout out Robert Forster, who was the disappearer in Breaking Bad. And
rest in peace.
I think at the end of the exchange, they're kind of half joking. Ruth's like, yeah, when Marty thanks her, and Ruth's like, yeah, well, you were going to have me killed if I didn't. So I think that's kind of a little bit of that, just, a little bit of foreshadowing there.
Again, I always love a good Ruth Marty scene, and I'm gonna take it for what it is. Enjoyed the dialogue, even though there's
the
problems
one justification I came up with, I guess, is if, say, Ruth said no on the money laundering, then Marty be like, well, guess what? I'm gonna tell Camille that you killed Avi, and just run that same game again. I mean, what's stopping him from doing so? I guess that's the only other way they could go with it. So in theory, he has a little bit of leverage, but it just doesn't make sense that Ruth was willing to jump back on, team money laundering so quickly. And I think that wraps us up there. So now we have to go over to prison and see the meeting between Wendy, Marty, and Omar. Omar tells him that he believes Camille is behind the attempt on his life. She gave it away when she began reminiscing with him in their previous meeting. Navarro gives them a phone number on a crumpled up piece of paper. When they call it, someone will come down from Chicago and take care of it. Wendy apologizes, and Omar says that he's sorry as well. She's his sister, and he loves her very much. He asks if they've heard about Nelson. For him, this confirms Camille's guilt. After the first attempt failed, she's taken out Nelson to prepare for the second attempt on his life. Omar then asks for an update on his situation. Marty informs him that they've laundered enough money to pay everyone in Mexico who needs to be paid. Wendy tells him that his removal from the SDN list is all set. Navarro asks Marty to return to Mexico to run operations until he gets back. Marty agrees in the Birdsley prison. On the way out, Wendy tells Marty, don't worry, he believes us. Shout out Omar. I think in this kind of mess of the last few episodes, his character has been pretty consistent from where it's been the whole show. Maybe it's because he was stuck in jail and they couldn't do too much with him or whatever, but he's at least been the same level of intelligence and ambition. I think his arc through the show tracks as well as any characters.
Yes, agree with all of that. Really think Omar was consistent and good throughout the show.
And I think one cool thing they did here is they give us kind of a disappearer. Here's your Deus Ex Machina, the hand of God here. Here's this random guy who could come and take care of a problem. And I like that it basically stayed as a red herring and it didn't become a get out of jail free card. Because when they first offered it, I'm like, oh fuck, tell me this guy is going to come around and like solve all the birds' problems magically. Like Boardwalk Empire used to have a character they would call at the end of every season for a while, and he would come basically save the day at the end of every season. And a lot of shows fall into that trope, and I'm glad that they didn't do that here with bringing in this random super assassin at the 11th hour or something like that.
Magnum Mills, you picking up on Marty's tell here a little bit when he's lying?
Yeah, he always looks down. He does it with Camilla at the episode at the beginning too, when he's serving her coffee and everything. He tries to look at the papers and everything. He avoids making eye contact with her at all costs. And Wendy's a little bit, she kind of does the thing where she'll look like to the side of you or just above your head and doesn't really make eye contact with Navarro until the very, very end, when I think she's trying to read whether or not he's buying their bullshit.
That takes us to Ruth slowly waking up to the sound of a guitar. She walks outside where she sees Russ playing the guitar and singing a tune. Kate is manning the grill and, well, Boyd is lighting firecrackers. Ruth soaks in the moment before heading up to the rooftop to join Wyatt. He's impressed that Ruth is actually building it. Wyatt just thinks that it's weird. Weird. 3 appears on the ladder and asks Ruth who she's talking to, and she says no one. But 3 knows that she's talking to Wyatt. He asks her if Wyatt is there right now, and Ruth says, yeah. 3 asks if he can join her, and Ruth answers, of course. They hold hands, and Ruth asks 3 if she thinks that the new construction is weird, echoing Ruth's previous thought. 3 doesn't understand why they have a pool. They've got a lake right there. Ruth replies that 3 doesn't know the first thing about being rich, and he says maybe Ruth can teach him.
I mean, again, nice callback to the scene, I believe it was from The Cousin of Death, when we see Ruth and Wyatt talking about their rich person house and her being like, well, what the fuck do we need a pool for? We got a lake right there. And I think this is a nice job of the show bringing stuff around full circle there.
Yeah, and again, the show's been great with the symbolism, and I think they're doing a good job with the pool here. I think this whole build and the pool was supposed to be Ruth's clean start. It all happened after she had that meeting with the judge at her house, and she realized that, the Langmore shit's ruining this beautiful property, but she's got Nelson's body buried in the foundation of the pool. So cool form of symbolism here, and I think it speaks to the bigger theme of what the show is all about.
Yeah, and even seeing kind of 3 taking Wyatt's place a little bit next to her is kind of really fucking sad if you think about it, because now Ruth's gone too, so now 3's kind of up alone on that roof by himself. Yeah. You start kind of thinking of the implications of how this episode actually goes, and yeah, it's a rough one though. And I did you like seeing all the rest of the Langmore clan? I think it was just an excuse to bring them back, but I thought it was I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was very nice.
I liked it a lot. I was happy for Ruth that she had that moment. I mean, she's been through so much, and to be able to walk outside and see for once her family being happy, that meant everything for Ruth. And again, it was another major clue that Ruth's time was coming to an end. And I didn't necessarily pick up on it the first time watching this, but it was a big clue. I remember just being happy for Ruth. And as dysfunctional as that family was, it was still a family, and they still had good times.
Let's be honest.
Ruth still loved them.
And that was Ruth's dream, really, not the big house or all that. Like, everything right there was her kind of idealized vision of what her family could have been. They're all hanging out and singing and drinking and grilling and doing the Langmore thing, and they're all happy. I think that's ultimately what she really wanted. She could really give a fuck about a circular driveway and an in-ground pool, just without anybody else. That's what she's left with. And that pretty much takes us through that. So it's time to go back to the Missouri Bell. And at the Bell, Ruth tells Rachel about laundering money through the casino with the permission of the FBI. Given her past experiences, it's not surprising that Rachel does not trust the FBI at all. She suggests to Ruth that they just get the hell out of there. Rachel is still worried about someone finding Nelson's body. Ruth assures her that they're fine. Rachel is also troubled by actually having to kill Nelson. It wasn't anything like killing an animal. Ruth reminds her that Nelson killed both her dad and Ben. Rachel says, yeah, she still killed a person. And Ruth replies, no, you didn't. You were never even there. And I think that just speaks to Ruth again, trying to just pretend it never happened, more or less.
Well, I also read this, Magnum Mills, as there's been a couple of similarities this episode specifically where they're trying to tie in. Maybe Ruth and Wendy aren't that much different. And this was kind of a thing where like the first scene in the mental hospital and stuff, how that went down. And then this scene, is that not something Wendy would have said? No, you didn't. You weren't even there. Can't you picture her telling Marty?
Oh,
that?
100%. Yeah, there's
So
definitely a lot of parallels between the characters, and one of those things, like they hate each other a little bit because they remind them of each other. I think that's definitely
well. And now Ruth has kind of crossed the line and done the mortal sin here. And
I gotta say, I question the overall utility of bringing Rachel back, but she gets some fucking lines, man. And I do think it's also interesting because she had such a terrible experience with the FBI. You would think it would make Ruth a little bit more hesitant about getting in bed with them. But the line, when they're talking about the birds or whatever, and Rachel's like,
Those dickheads are lucky I got a work ethic as a pre-existing condition.
all right, that's basically a Ruth line coming out of Rachel's lips, because that fucking killed me. Like, I had to rewind that one like 3 times. Like, wait, what now? The work ethic is a pre-existing condition? I never would have thought of that. That's a solid piece of writing right there.
And you feel for Rachel here a little bit because, she was out of this life. She was done. She was clean. She was done with it. She gets brought back in, and a couple episodes later, she's having to kill a guy. I mean, you feel for her here, and she is not built for this, man. Like, her character is not built for this, to be a Ruth, to be a Marty, to be a Wendy. This is like crazy. This has to be crazy for her. She killed a dude last night.
Yeah,
Just
she
showing
wants
up
to
to work.
eat cold pizza and watch Duck Dynasty reruns or whatever.
That's all she
This
wanted.
is not like, she's very happy just being a competent casino manager, and that's as far as she needs to go. Her instincts are really right here. They should have just gotten the fuck out.
Yeah, I thought Ruth kind of made a point here, and they kind of said that this was, Ruth has a way now of justifying killing, right? I mean, he was a piece of shit. He murdered my dad. He murdered Ben. Nelson, he was a hitman for the cartel. I mean, he's definitely not a great dude or anything, but shout out to the actor and all. But you kind of see where Ruth was like justifying this over and over and over again.
Let's be honest, for Rachel, it was definitely kill or be killed.
Yes.
Maybe in a court of law, you can make the argument she took a pot shot at him, but he was most definitely there to kill whoever he found in that trailer, more or less, or maybe take them hostage and torture them. No good thing was going to happen. So I get why Rachel's having feelings, because she's a real human being who still has feelings. And you get the impression that the further we get down the Ozark rabbit hole here, not a lot of these characters are willing to have feelings. Maybe they had them once upon a time, and they just push them way back down and try not to think about them.
They do.
That pretty much wraps up that, just a little scene there. So we get Rachel's viewpoint, and she's brought in the loop on the money laundering. Now it's time for that big meeting with the FBI. It's actually going down at the funeral home. So we get to see the boy Harry one more time. Once everyone gets there, Marty handles the introductions, and we get down to business. The FBI tells Camilla about Navarro's prison transfer. Marty tells them that Ruth and Rachel will be handling the money laundering operations at the Bell. And before they agree to anything, Ruth requires that the FBI officially apologize to Rachel for how they treated her previously. They make a little bit of whatever, but then, Hannah eventually apologizes to Rachel, and Rachel accepts her apology. Paperwork is exchanged, verbal agreements are struck. Things are looking good for the birds. As the meeting breaks up, things are looking good for the birds, but Wendy tells Marty, no celebrating yet. And Ruth gets one last Harry scene. Gotta like that. Did you think for a second maybe that the apology to Rachel was going to derail the whole thing? I pretty much thought this was a done deal, but when that got brought up at the last second, I was like, oh shit, tell me this is the thing that breaks the deal.
Yes and no. I mean, it didn't really like scare me. They came to the meeting. They have no choice here. Ruth has already kind of caved to Marty's threats. To me, it wasn't like, well, if she refused to, if they were a hard ass with her, they're just going to walk right out. I don't think so. And honestly, Rachel isn't even a player. Her name isn't on the license. There's not even, to me, it was just fluff. I didn't think it was going to do anything.
Yeah, again, I think the deal had to ultimately be approved. Not a ton here. I like seeing Harry one last time. They kind of brought, I think that's why they did it at the funeral home, basically, right? Just to kind of be like, they're doing a greatest hits kind of thing, bring everyone back in. That's someplace we hadn't been in a minute. So I enjoyed that. And I think that's pretty much it. Although I will say, I think Rachel did deserve that apology. I would not have made it of a deal breaker, but after the dude got her hooked back on drugs and everything, really fucked up her life. Yeah,
100%,
she
dude.
deserved that apology.
She definitely did. And we got to just hit real quick Ruth with a great line here with,
Are all the swinging dicks ready here?
Well, that's not a characterization I'd offer, but yes.
Classic Ruth Langmore, always great. Every scene could use a good Ruthanism, and this was it. From there, we see Wendy heading over to Lazy O for one last showdown with Nathan, but she first sees Sam in the parking lot. He's going to North Carolina with Annalise and Nathan. Annalise thinks it's a good idea, and she can teach him how to be grateful. He and Wendy share a fond farewell, and that's the last time we see our boy Sam. Wendy makes her way over to Nathan and Annalise. She explains that she's not there to fight. Actually, the foundation has made a healthy donation to the website dedicated to finding Ben. Wendy wants Nathan to use that money to do good and continue his work in wherever and whatever he wants. Annalise thanks Wendy and heads to the bus. Wendy asks Nathan if he got everything that he wanted. I mean, he got everything except that he didn't get to hurt Wendy anymore. Nathan snidely asks if Wendy is proud of herself. Wendy denies this, but based on the smirk that she makes as she's walking away, I think she is, in fact, quite proud of herself. Mills, did you enjoy the last scene between Wendy and Nathan? This was one plot line where I was literally all over the place heading into this. What would that final showdown be? Would it be peaceful? Would they agree to forgive and at least go their separate ways and not be, playing a game to hurt each other anymore? Would Wendy have to kill him? Would it be with Nathan pulling away with their children? I mean, there was a lot of kind of things with this that I was all over the board. I got to say, the one thing I never thought would happen is the kids actually going to North Carolina.
I agree with that. And I feel like I even had it on, I don't know if I said it last episode, but I even think I had like Sam goes to North Carolina on my predictions list, and I don't know if we got to it. So now I have the remorse. I hope he goes, and I hope him and Annalise get together and she leaves Nathan and they're happy together forever, and he eventually has her compressed into a diamond or whatever. That's what I'm going.
Was there a little bit of a foreskin? Oh, sorry, a foreshadowing there, because Wendy kind of, when Sam was like, she's going to teach me how to be grateful, Wendy kind of smirks and goes,
I'm sure she'll be willing to teach you a lot of things.
I thought there was a little bit of foreshadowing there that maybe, just maybe,
maybe Wendy knows that her father does not prefer blondes. And do you think that Wendy was indeed proud of herself at the end?
Yes.
She's walking away, that little look. Okay, just making sure we read that the same way.
And because though, Magnum Mills, not only did she kind of get her kids back and won the war with her dad, she also did something really healthy with her foundation. And despite all Wendy's faults, she really believed in her head through all the crazy shit they endured. Once this foundation thing became realistic, that foundation was going to do great things. This donation, it's strategic. It's kind of a final passive aggressive FU to her father, but it's totally also a good feeling to make a large donation that will be used for some sort of good somehow, some way. I think that kind of gives her that passive aggressive FU, but also she can compartmentalize all the bad with saying, well, I just use the foundation money to do something decent. So I think that's a double proud of herself kind of moment.
Oh, I basically agree. I'm just kind of curious because we had the thing with the donation and the website, and that the healthy stipend that will continue in perpetuity until they find Ben, which we know will never happen. So it basically means an ongoing bribe. I didn't quite know to read it is if this was her paying Nathan like for his silence and not to leave the kids alone, or if it was just like a huge flex, be like, here's your fucking money. You know what? You wanted it. Here's your money. I don't even give a shit. Like, that's how little it means to me. Or maybe a little column A and a little column B. I just wasn't quite sure how to read this, if this was just like a pure just swinging dick move by Wendy, or if it was like a little bit of she just wants to make sure that Nathan doesn't come back around.
I think it's all things. A little bit of all.
Fair enough. I did like one more thing, and that's when we get the goodbye between Sam and Wendy, and they're having a nice little hug. And Sam's like, I just want to thank you for having my back all these years. And the camera cuts to Wendy Bird's face, and she's like, what? This guy thinks I have his back? She's like, okay, whatever you say, Sam. All right, good for you. But that's definitely the look on her face is like, holy shit, like, this guy really is a little bit not quite, with it, so to speak. Like he's a little bit, I can't believe he still thinks I have his back. All right, cool. After that, we're back at the birdhouse where the family is preparing for the fundraiser. They're all dressed up. And they all look great. They arrive at the fundraiser where Jim informs them that everything is going extremely well. It's a goddamn coronation. This pleases Wendy very much, and she asks where Schaefer is. After being told that he's at the blackjack tables downstairs, Wendy heads down to dunk on his ass one last time. And, shout out Jim. I'm going to be using this line in other places many, many times where he says,
"This whole place smells like freshly minted money."
I like the smell of that. That's all I'm saying. And one thing to note, when they're getting ready, we obviously, Marty's in a tux with the bow tie. Jonah's just wearing a regular tie. And Charlotte's wearing a dress, and it does have a kind of a bow thing going on in the front. So I don't know if the reference to the title card symbol is Marty's bow tie, if it's the bow on Charlotte's dress, or maybe just a reference to the gala being a black tie event in general. Any thoughts on any of that?
I got to say, I love what the show did with Jim. There was a part where we thought Jim, he might bang Wendy, he might die, he might be gone. I love what they did with Jim. Jim was even in on that meeting with the FBI. He's basically like Wendy's like attorney / advisor / right hand everything. I love what they did with him. He's got the great lines. He's clutch. He always comes through with everything. I could use a Jim in my life, dude.
For what it's worth, he randomly sat on the couch next to Camilla, like during the FBI meeting. I always kind of wonder what that was. Pretty straightforward here, but you just like Wendy, when Jim tells her, and Wendy's like, "So we're bulletproof," and Jim says it's a goddamn coronation. I think Wendy Bird climaxed on cam in that moment. Shout out Laura Linney. Like she just had like the little, you see the rocket ships going up in the eyes and the stars and everything. She was just like, that was it, right? Because this is what she's been waiting for. This is the peak for Wendy Bird. She was waiting and waiting and waiting, and this is everything she dreamed could happen is happening. And I think the other thing that Jim talks about when everyone's coming there or whatever, that they have a serious Rust Belt thing. I thought that was tied somehow maybe to the voting machine thing, because you had Michigan and Wisconsin. Never comes back around. Any thoughts on that overall? It just felt like, again, maybe there was a little bit of this plot thread was going to go somewhere else, and it never happened.
Well, the only thing I could think of is maybe they started to get over into, Ohio and stretch kind of the Midwest to get into the old Rust Belt and get a bunch of senators and congressmen and things from kind of more towards the Rust Belt. Or maybe it was a reference to, we just got a bunch of the old heads in here that are powerful. That's probably more like it. From there, my dude, we see Wendy pulls Schaefer away from the blackjack table, and she hits him with that red right hand. They've informed their people in Wisconsin and Michigan to go ahead and pull his voting machines. Oh man, Schaefer's furious. He's protesting, but Wendy tells him it's already done. They don't need him for the foundation, and they no longer need him to get Omar Navarro off the SDN list. And just in case he gets any ideas, they've already informed the FBI about the voting machines. Schaefer warns Wendy that she does not want to do this, and Wendy gleefully reports, "Oh, but I do."
And this is just, again, Wendy Bird doing her political thing, loving it. I think the main disappointment here is that, like, Schaefer was supposed to be a guy, right? Like a very powerful senator. Just another thing, it just feels like the Birds got too big too quick. Like all of a sudden, they drive home in a fucking Cutlass Sierra or whatever, but they're the king and queen of the Midwest. It just doesn't quite track all the way. That's all. This Schaefer guy, I feel like, should have been able to put up some more roadblocks for them.
He should have known that they weren't trying to get, Omar off the SDN list.
Yeah,
like
right. Once people started back-channeling against him in Mexico, he should have been like, all right, what the fuck? Because you see that in the first scene he has with Wendy of this season. He is kind of like, what the fuck is going on? Don't give me that mealy mouth bullshit and whatnot.
He should know shit that Wendy Bird does not. Or know
he should
what
at least
Wendy
know
knows.
what Jim knows. He should at the minimum know what, like, a Jim level dude knows. So I just think unfortunately they just neutered the character a little bit. It would have been more interesting to try to flip him around to their side, or him actually having one more play to make. Like maybe he prevents Omar from getting transferred or something like that. it seemed a little bit too easy. Although I did like the idea of they actually kind of tied this up a little bit by Wendy saying that they reported the voting machine thing to the FBI, because as long as they're kind of telling on themselves, realistically, if that happened in real life, you figure it's like a slap on the wrist, if anything. But just a question, do you think she actually reported to the FBI, or is she bluffing a little bit?
It didn't show that she did, but this was one thing she was passionate about, and they made it a whole thing throughout the entire time.
So her red line in the sand.
Yeah. So I'm in a way, you're happy for Wendy. She gets her redemption. She gets to make sure she doesn't have to do that. I will say, Magnum Mills, they do bring this back with a little bit of cool writing later in the episode. We'll get to it when she realizes that, oh man, now Ruth is done.
She should have just waited. Like,
she should have waited to blow her wad
Omar
on.
was done
Yes.
before actually pulling.
She should have waited to blow her wad on.
Pure hubris to do it here. She just did it because she was having a good night and she felt like dunking on dude now. Yep. It was from a business standpoint or a practical standpoint, the wrong move. And last question before we move on, we talked about Wendy climaxing a little bit when Jim talked about it being a coronation. What do you think she got off on more, that or her just basically telling fucking Schaefer to take a hike here? Because she seemed to really be enjoying this.
I think the Schaefer thing. She got to
more personal, right?
More personal, and she went against everything she ever wanted to go against with the voting machine. She gets even on that. And let's face it, her and Schaefer were never friendly from the beginning. I mean, the first meeting, Schaefer basically said, "I hate you. What do you do?" Like they were not friends. So I think this was, she expects that from Jim. Jim has brought her to that level of climax before. This was something new, being able to own Schaefer.
Enjoyed it. It just didn't make total sense from, you would think Wendy Bird would play all of the angles. Like, they're so close. She tells Marty before, don't celebrate yet. Seems like she had a little bit of the premature celebration here. After that, we have a very quick scene, which is just Omar is being pulled out. He's told he's being transferred. He's like, where am I going? Where am I going? No one will answer him. No one wants to tell Omar where he's going. And this scene basically exists so that a little bit later on, Wendy and Marty are going to talk about the option of trying to have the transfer called off or whatever. This scene is just pretty much here to tell us Omar's still alive right now. So that option's on the table. After that, we go to the fundraiser, and Charlotte's sitting at the bar. She does not even need a fake ID. Bartender just gives her some champagne. Jonah comes up. I think he's using the restroom, whatever. And Charlotte asks Jonah if he's going to miss the Ozarks when they move to Chicago. Jonah replies that he'll miss the caves, maybe the crickets, and mostly being close to Buddy. He asks Charlotte the same question, and Charlotte just can't believe that it's over. Ruth walks up and compliments Jonah on his appearance. Jonah blushes a bit, and Ruth reminds him that there's always a job for him at the Bell if he wants it. Jonah passes, saying that he's going to go legit, at least until he gets through high school. And dude, who misses crickets?
I guess when you're in that city life and you don't get crickets and you go live out in the country.
Crickets are replaced by cars. They're just C words that sound the same at night. Maybe not the same, but you know what I mean. Like, if you're just used to noise, you're used to noise, I feel.
I enjoyed this scene, Magnum Mills. Yes, it was funny that Charlotte's just openly drinking champagne. Just like she openly drinks everywhere in the show. So I mean that tracks, but funny.
Jonah walks up and he says, "Oh, is this me? Like, do you think that was a rum and coke or something, or is Jonah drinking straight mixer?"
I think he's drinking just Coke, but that would have been funny as hell if it was a run with Captain and Coke or something. That would be great.
He puts a lemon in there or something, so it's not.
He gets a lime in there. Yeah,
it was a lemon, but yeah, Ruth comes up and gets the lines, and you do see here she talks about Jonah look like a grown ass man in his suit, and this is the first time Jonah gives her that like thirsty look a little bit, and I'm like, okay, this is the first time they've gone out of their way to show like that Jonah might really have a real thing for Ruth outside of just kind of the natural attraction of a teenage boy being more or less attracted to any female who exists. I
gotta say, I picked up on him like falling hard for Ruth and just having this like thing in his eye for her throughout since he left his parents and went to start to work for her. I think all that was because he had a thing for her, but it wasn't like I would do anything for you, I'm head over heels in love. But I definitely picked up that he had a bone to pick with her, so to speak, and I mean that sexually.
I think what you're saying is he's a little bit cunt-struck over Ruth Langford.
I think he is a little cunt-struck.
I think it's fair. It's Ruth's own words, using it about her. And real quick, we do get a little exchange between Jonah and Charlotte, where Jonah says, "Hey, when we get back, are you gonna let me take you to Portillo's for chocolate cake shakes?" And Charlotte's like, "Do you even have to ask?" And for the record, a Portillo chocolate cake shake is a real thing. It's basically a milkshake that is mostly chocolate cake. They use a whole slice of chocolate cake frosting and all. One of these shakes is, Jamie G, how many calories do you think's in it? Just give me a guess.
I'm going to say somewhere between 1,300 and 1,800. I'll drill that down to, let's say, 1,400.
Yeah, 1490 roughly. So, and I think what your caloric intake on a day, roughly 2,000 for just the easy number. So for the most part, if you have one of these shakes, maybe you can get a small fry with it, and you should be good for the day. That should be all you need. And go on YouTube, look at it. It is crazy. It's drinkable cake basically. And
how much is it, Magnum Else? Is it a $5 shake like in Pulp Fiction, or is it a tad bit more than that?
Well, if I had to guess, that's probably like a $8 to $10 shake, I bet.
$8 to $10 shake.
I consider it comparable to a cheesesteak. So yeah, somewhere in that $8 to $12 range, depending on. I mean, because they make the cake, they show it's not. They actually make the cake and the frosting, and you get what you pay for. I mean, 1,500. That's like Michael Phelps back in the day probably just had like 5 of those every day just to keep going. But that's
just
like
keep his caloric intake up.
Like you should be done for the day after that. So
yeah, dude,
it just sounds like one of those things that sounds like, oh my God, that's crazy. I couldn't eat it every day, but I need to try that before I die, kind of.
You gotta have one at least.
Yeah, and I watched them make it on the YouTube channel, and yeah, I would not even like Captain. I'm just not a huge chocolate guy. It's fine. I'm just not super, but that was like, I'm gonna have to try this.
We're gonna get one.
Yeah, no, you see like people trying to do like the homemade versions of it, and everyone's like, no, it ain't the same.
Back to Ozark, Magnum Mills. I think we're ready to move on from that monster cake shake. Wendy and Marty are talking with Claire about their upcoming move to Chicago, and we see Camellia walk up to them, and they toast to their collective success. After Camellia gets real with Claire, this is her final chance to tell her what happened to Javi. If she tells the truth now, she will be forgiven. If Camellia finds out that Claire was lying,
I'll have someone slice you from your gun to your chin.
After a long pause, Claire says it was Ruth Langmore. Claire apologizes to Camellia and says that the birds didn't know anything about this. Camellia makes it clear that the birds, that if they attempt to warn Ruth, her new Nelson will kill all of them, starting with the children. Claire apologizes, and Wendy and Marty try to figure out what they can do. They consider trying to move back to the Omar side, but after cutting ties with Schaefer, they can't get him off the SDN list. They're out of moves here.
Did you think Claire was going to break? I mean, we talked about this a little bit as we were, pre-recording on cam. And like, to me, like, I feel like Claire could be knocked over by a gentle breeze, basically. I joked about maybe her gardener, like all that Camellia had to do is be like, I am going to switch your petunias and your rose bushes or something. Claire, like, Ruth Langmore did it. It feels like she was going to, and especially that last line from C to C. It's not C to shining sea. It's not C to shining sea, so to speak.
No, bro, the C to the C line was amazing. I will say this: Claire had an opportunity to cave immediately after this was over, as she saw the cartel literally in her circular driveway, getting through her, her security system and whatnot, the gate to get in, and she didn't crack. So, she's been tested once or twice, but this is the first time Claire's been tested by Camellia personally. She did, she was also during the negotiation period when they were doing the stock options and shit and coming up with all that. She didn't break there either. So I didn't know that this is how it would go. I knew Camellia was going to get to the bottom of it this episode. I didn't necessarily know it was going to be Claire, but it makes sense that it was.
I think the main thing for me is, what seemed to, I think, suck Claire all the way in was Camellia being like, oh, this one time I'll forgive you. Do you honestly believe that Camellia is going to forget about this and actually forgive her? Doesn't it seem far more likely that she'll just wait a while, she'll get in good at Shaw, she'll find someone else who can basically do what Claire's doing, and then fucking kill her, right? Is there she should know from all and that's what Claire, she's not really in the game, as Mike Ehrmantraut would say. She doesn't understand. I think this is complete bullshit, and the birds know it too. Like, that's why they would tell her, don't do it, even though it seems easy. Like, oh, you just say and then it's all over. You never have to worry again. Camellia is never going to trust her. She'll just look at her as a pawn. She can move. And then when it's the applicable time, she'll take the pawn off the board. Won't need it anymore. The one thing, again, I didn't like is it seems like Camellia just says the one guy, right? New Nelson. They don't even give him a name. I like how they're just interchangeable at this point. Doesn't even name. So we're calling him New Nelson. I looked in the credits. I didn't even, on IMDb at least, guy wasn't in there yet. So I apologize to you, dude. good for you. But she has him like, oh yeah, all right. If the birds even make eye contact with Ruth, kill their children. And then dude just stands there to watch Ruth, and both the birds leave, walk out of his sight. You telling me there's zero way that the birds, they couldn't figure out a fucking thing to get a message to Ruth, even after I thought, this is me working through. I'm like, holy shit, remember the thing where Javi gave them the crumpled up thing? What if now they got like a crumpled up thing to Ruth? Like via a waiter or Rachel or something like that write a little note on a napkin or a fucking straw wrapper. It doesn't seem like they should have tried. I mean, I don't know. The fact that they didn't even make an effort, and it also bothered me that Camilla makes it explicit. Do not let the birds get anywhere near her, and they're just able to just walk away. Really?
Well, but dude, how could they? I mean, if they wanted to, they could text her.
That's what I'm saying.
Just,
like,
but
the dude should have told Marty and Wendy, like, you need to stay right here. That's what I'm saying. Where you can see all of them.
To play devil's advocate here, yes, the whole letting them out of sight thing, and I think they would need more than one guy to do this. But outside of all that, to play devil's advocate here, I will say that the birds were just out of moves, man. If they did anything and Camellia didn't kill Ruth, she didn't get her revenge, all of their deals, everything they have falls apart. Camellia doesn't need this deal with the FBI. She could, in theory, kill the birds, pull up and move back to Mexico, run the cartel, and figure out a way to infiltrate back into the Chicago market. She doesn't necessarily need...
Right, she's already got the stock options and the financials that were for Omar's kids. So she's already got guaranteed money and control of the cartel.
Yeah,
You're right, she doesn't really need this, really. She could just kill them all.
My whole thing here is if she doesn't get revenge on Ruth, they tip her off and Ruth drains her safe, and the last thing we see is Ruth driving off into the sunset somewhere. Camellia is going to then turn around and put it on Wendy and Marty, and everything's off. So I think that's why they're out of hand. They had no play. That's the only thing I'll say.
What I'll say is if there was going to be a season 5, Ruth would have gotten out of town, and they would have managed to kick the can down the road is what would have fucking happened. You know, if this had happened in a previous season, I'm just saying it's one of those things that plays out a little bit differently than it typically would have because it's a finale. It just, you want everything, I think, to kind of remain consistent. That's all. Any real other thing here, I do like the fact that they do try to be like, all right, they walk us through what if we go to Omar? All right, well, then we have to call off the hit. All right, and then we can get this other hitman that Omar gave us to Camilla, but the SDM list and Schaefer. And to Marty, to his credit, isn't like, could you have just wait until tomorrow to dunk on Schaefer? Because deep down Marty probably wanted to say that shit, right?
Yeah, it was so stupid. Why did you have to do it here? You could let's make sure everything.
Just the same way when you told him don't celebrate yet when they walked out of the meeting from the funeral home, Marty should have done the same thing. When she asked
where Schaefer is, you got it.
He should have turned to Wendy and be like, "Don't celebrate yet," and parroted the same line back at her. That would have been
yes. You don't count your cash until it's in your hand. I mean, it's just there's no need for it. But I do like that it set up the tension, and they were truly out of options, and they basically just let it happen. And it was weird because this whole episode they kind of came through as a family and as a couple. They basically are back in love. So like that scene when she gets in the car before the accident, they are so giddy. They're like a fresh new family. They're in love. That like Marty and Wendy have never been like happier together. It was bizarre. And
they somewhat recommitted to each other at the end of this episode, that's for sure.
And now they're basically saying like, we'll deal with Ruth dying together. We'll deal with Ruth dying because we have our love together. Like earlier in the season, Marty wouldn't even think about the thought of giving up Ruth.
That's basically what happens, because right after that, we just see that Ruth decides to head home before people start making speeches. And she says good night to Rachel, and they have a very nice, pleasant exchange. Rachel's like, don't you dare eat my cold pizza or whatever. You feel like they're just going to sit there and watch the Duck Dynasty, have a good time. And we see that new Nelson is watching Ruth leave. And when she walks out the front door, he places a call. Wendy and Marty share a hug and wonder if they'll be able to bear what's about to happen to Ruth. Marty says that they will. This is pretty straightforward here. Marty says the line to Wendy, and I think it's a little bit of where they were. Remember, after that would have been episode 9, being that when they're in the hotel room drinking, talking about what to do after Ruth killed Javi. And here, Marty's like, do you really need me to say it? Anything we try to do, Wendy, is going to be suicide. I was really, for a hot minute, I was worried they were going to try to do a position swap thing, where now Marty is okay with Ruth dying, but Wendy's against it. They hint at it here, but they don't go the full way with it. It's just basically what you laid that out, really, that they do not have, anywhere to go. Even if they in the car, even if left, right, back and forward are covered, they can't even go up or down anymore. Like they're out of unless they can go to the fourth dimension or whatever, they're pretty fucked. And I think the line where Wendy's like, I'm scared I'll lose you. I think that's basically being her saying like she's worried that Marty will blame her for Ruth's death. And I think the way Marty says, we both will, is him saying like they'll be able to get through it because they'll bear the burden together, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
No, I think, and that's exactly the point I was just making, is they finally like are together and back kind of in love, and kind of everything else outside of their bubble doesn't matter anymore. And we hadn't seen that ever in this show, where they've kind of been so on the same page. Right?
I've always felt they would be a deadly combination if they actually work together at the peak of their powers. Their skill sets complement each other very well. I think they would be, the sum of their parts would be greater than the individual pieces. Just think about it this way: a little devil's advocate on the other side. Situations reversed. Does Ruth try to warn Marty and Wendy? She probably does, doesn't she?
She probably does.
Just saying.
But it's just her, though. It's not her entire family.
Where I for some reason, I feel like Ruth would take a stand on principle a little bit more. She even does at the end of the episode, and we'll get to that soon enough. Just one of those things, if you want a devil's advocate for it, if Camilla said, don't warn the birds, I'm going to get them or whatever, I still feel like Ruth would be like, fuck you, narco bitch, and try to warn them.
Ruth that's why it's all about Ruth. We love her. It's about that she's just one of the greatest characters ever. Yeah, you're not wrong, though. I think she probably would.
Yeah, and that brings us to, it's the finale. People got to start going, right? And it's time for Omar to get transferred, and we see that the van transferring Omar is stopped in the middle of nowhere so the driver can take a piss. The driver, who's one of the guards, gets out of the car, acts like he's going to take a piss for about 2 seconds, walks over, shoots the only other guard who's with him in the passenger seat. That guy's dead. So he opens up the back door. Omar's the only one there. The driver gives Omar the gun, releases him, and tells him, hey, all right, go. Omar hesitates, and it seems like he thinks something's wrong, but he starts to walk off anyways. Behind him, he hears a gun being cocked. He turns around, and he pulls the trigger on the gun that the guard gave him, but there are no bullets. The driver shoots him twice, and then calls in for backup due to an attempted prisoner escape. Omar knew it was a setup, right? Kind of when he walked out, and the guy's like, just go. And he looks around, and there's no one there to take him away. Because they're in the middle of nowhere, right? There easily could have been another car or people in the woods or something. I think the fact that there's no one there, it's just him and this guy, and he's just like, okay, just go into the woods or whatever. And I think that
and you kind of see when he turns around, and he kind of pulls. He almost knew that there wasn't going to be bullets in there, and and so yeah, I mean,
playing his part at that point.
Yep, not much to
the
this.
Birds probably sold him out as well as his sister at that point, is what I'm guessing.
I think he knew it was the end. One thing I will say was kind of funny is they did try to, set it up with a little bit of conviction where, they made a Spanish speaking guard be the one that was doing it. So maybe there was some thought that it was an inside guy, working for him.
Like Navarro had his own guy or something like that. That would have been, I would love that. I would have loved that. Again, if there would have been a season 5, that's probably what happens, right? Something like that. So then Omar's out, but then everyone thinks he's dead. Oh, I wanted to reference another show we covered, but I don't want to spoil anybody, so I won't do that.
From there, Magnum Mills, we get to hear Troy. That's right. They Reminisce Over You by Pete Rock and CL Smooth. That's what Ruth is listening as she drives home. She arrives to find yet another black Escalade in her driveway. Ruth parks and turns off the car. She takes a minute to gather herself, and she seems to know what's going on here. She gets out of the truck, and Camelia approaches from the woods, gun in hand. Ruth asks her how she found out. Camelia replies that Claire Shaw told her. Ruth tells her that she's not sorry. Her son was a murdering bitch, and now she knows where he got it from. Camelia points the gun at Ruth, but hesitates. Ruth is very much herself here to the very end, and she asks Camelia, well, are you going to fucking do this shit or what? That's enough for Camelia, and she shoots Ruth in the chest. Mills, one thing I will say that they did a really good job of here that I liked was, number one, the song. That was awesome. Number two, I really enjoyed the contrast of Camelia wearing the all black dress and Ruth in the all white. Worked really well for me. And I love that, she shot her in the chest, not the face. And we just see that blood on the white dress. Again, very difficult to watch Ruth die. Love her very much, but I love that she was true to herself up until the very end.
Yeah, I mean, you have to shoot Ruth Langmore in the heart, right? That's her who she is, the big heart. Despite it all, underneath it, that's why we love her so much. And they reminisce over you, Troy. That's very famously in the hip hop community a song you use. I don't know, when you lose like a close friend, or you want to pay respect to someone who's passed. It's actually about Troy Dixon, I think, who was Troy D from Heavy D and the Boys, whatever, very close to Pete Rock, CL Smooth back in the day. So extreme classic, but used in a very certain way that as soon as I heard this, my antenna started firing up, and I'm like, oh, this might not be good. Even though you kind of knew where the scene was headed, it reinforced it for me. And I do wish a little bit that maybe they brought Nas back around after using Illmatic so heavily in Cousin of Death. I think there's ways you could have brought that back here, because I think there's a part of the line where Killer Mike talks about the tragic thing for Nas is like being able to see Manhattan and everything, but being stuck anyways. And that's where Ruth dies.
Queens.
Like, or being able to see Queens, like in Queens, being able to see Manhattan. And the point being, like, Ruth here is she can see almost her new house being built and everything, and she's so close that she can touch it, but it never happens. Like you talk about, to paraphrase Juvenile, you get it from your mama. Ruth says, "I'm not sorry. Your son was a murdering bitch, and now I know where he got it from." That's one good dig. And when she's like, "Well, are you gonna fucking do this shit or what?" That's Ruth Langmore. That's how Ruth Langmore goes out.
That's the last thing Ruth says.
I can live with Ruth Langmore dying. I just feel this was a very awkward way of doing it, right down to the fact that when she sees this Escalade parked in her driveway, she willingly parks the car,
and goes and looks in the Escalade.
She could have just turned that fucking truck around and hauled ass on.
Yeah.
She accepted her fate. Like, once I don't know, feels a little fatalistic for Ruth. She's got so much to fight for now, and she's just, I don't know.
Yeah, she owns the casino, majority owner.
And she
She's
has to
having a
know
brand
the
new
woods
house
better
built.
than these people, right? You have to think that there's a way she could get away, or at least hide for a minute, regroup, live for another day. Warn fucking Rachel.
I guess she should have never thrown that pistol from Frank Cosgrove Jr. in the lake. She should have kept it, or just went to the shoreline and grabbed it real quick. But man, it was tough to watch because, again, we don't want to see Ruth die. But
how did you feel about the long pause?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
I actually the gun for a long time, and it felt
and
like
she seemed to lower it. That's the one thing I was just going to say is, like, I found that to be the most interesting component, other than Ruth just having the balls to say whatever she wants, not fearing death at all, even though you could see that pure emotion on Julia Garner's face where she was like crying and like getting ready to die, knowing it was happening, and knowing as soon as she says, "Are you going to do this or what?" that was it. That was a great moment for me. But when Camellia hesitated and started to lower a little bit, I thought she might potentially for a second figure out a way to use Ruth and maybe spin this back around. And the double cross here is to take out the birds, and Ruth lives. For a minute, I thought that.
Wouldn't Ruth be a much better ally than the birds? I mean, I guess maybe now the birds have this theoretical political power, but for the most part, Ruth is like, I could see Camilla respecting Ruth. Even though she killed her son, she did it because, he killed Wyatt. Blood for blood. I think she might buy that. She's the one in charge of the fucking casino. They all have the FBI deal. And especially if Ruth's like, oh, that's the one thing. Did you at any point think during the scene, Ruth knows her fate, did you ever think like, oh, did Marty and Wendy tell you they were there when I shot Javi? Did it ever occur to you that Ruth might sell the birds out here at the end?
The thought crossed my mind, and I was kind of like, okay, then everyone dies. But when she didn't, I realized, like, wow, I think that's it. I think the birds are just gonna sail off here and get what they want. That, as soon as she didn't and Ruth died, I was like, okay, I think that's probably it. I really didn't worry about the birds dying anymore. Well, I mean, let's face it, they made it through a freaking traffic wreck that would kill Hulk Hogan, but somehow they made it out. It just.
Well, again, devil's advocated again. Wendy and Marty are on their knees. Wendy Bird fucking gives up Ruth Langmore 100 out of 100 times, doesn't she? Like, oh yeah, Ruth was there too. Even if she knows she's going to die, she wants to make sure Ruth goes down with him, right? Tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong.
So I'm just saying she gets bad respect here. She went out properly. And I'm not, yes, am I mad the show killed Ruth Langmore? She's one of my favorite characters. Absolutely. She went out in a way that I think is proper. I just think it's a shame that Camilla was the one to do it. A character who was just introduced a couple episodes ago, that kind of thing. I would have liked a grander exit for Ruth if she was going to go. That's all.
Yeah.
I can live with her dying. I just wish she would have she got a good Ruth death in the way that she acted. I just wish there was more scale to it or something like that. You know what I mean? It feels a little bit, I guess she died in a driveway, right? It's just a shame Wendy Bird didn't pull the trigger. I was half right on the final showdown being in a driveway.
You weren't wrong on that one. From there, Ruth's death kind of leads us into a bit of a montage here. We have the Bird family at the fundraiser, and then Camellia standing over Ruth's body. The Birds arrive home. Before they get out of the car, Wendy and Marty say that they love each other. This was kind of weird to me when they pull up, because the kids like immediately get out, like something maybe is wrong. And I'm thinking, okay, did they just tell the kids that Ruth is going to die? We don't know. We don't know how the kids are going to take that.
Why just says go lay down or what? Or what she said after the meeting. I guess she doesn't say anything here, but
she doesn't say anything. Well, that's what's weird. The kids just like leave, and they leave abruptly, and kind of seems like maybe they're upset. And so in my mind, I'm wondering if Marty and Wendy just told them that, hey, we couldn't stop it. Ruth dies. But then they look at each other and say, I love you.
Like,
and
do you know how tall those people are at this point? And they're in the back of a fucking Cutlass Sierra. Have you ever been in the backseat of a Cutlass Sierra? If I was as tall as Jonah and Charlotte, I'd want to get out of the backseat quickly too.
Yeah, and maybe that's it. I mean, I guess my point is we don't know a big component of the Birds.
There's no way. There's zero chance that they told them about Ruth.
The whole point that I'm trying to make though is that they're burdening. They're dealing with this burden of Ruth. That's just them. How Jonah and Charlotte handle it, knowing that they knew and they couldn't stop it, or they chose not to stop it, is a whole different stratosphere of problems for them. That's the point I was trying to make here. Like Wendy and Marty can compartmentalize and deal with it. Jonah and Charlotte, that's debatable.
Oh yeah, but I don't think there's any way that they told them about this.
They just, if you go back and rewatch the scene, they get out.
No, they bail.
It's quick. It's very quick. They don't say anything. It's like, okay, are they dropping them off? Like, it was very weird. We'll see inside. Nothing. They just get out.
This is where practical part of my brain takes over, and they do that so they can get the shot they want with Wendy and Marty telling that they love each other in the front seat.
I'm sure, but it was just
that's
weird.
Why I like where you're going with this. My guess is the writers didn't have anything for it. It's just like stage direction. Like, car pulls up, Jonah and Charlotte get out. My guess is if you looked at the script, that's what it said.
Yeah, it would have been better to just be like, we're gonna run, I gotta pee, something.
I gotta pee. I want to get out of this dress or out of these shoes or something. There's
something, because otherwise it was just so sudden and abrupt, especially when they're all kumbaya, we love you, we're together as one happy family, and then they just randomly get out and slam the door and just abruptly leave.
See, that's funny because it never even occurred to me for a second that was a thing. I had a different Cutlass, but I've sat in the back, not the greatest back seat, and they are tall kids at this point. So, the point of the montage, I think, is just basically to show here's the Birds getting everything they want, and it's contrasted with Bruce's dead body. Like you said, that white dress with the red blood. And I think it's just illustrating that's the cost of what they got, what they wanted, but that was the price they had to pay. They paid the iron price, so to speak.
They did pay the iron price.
And that brings us to, dude, this is the final scene of the final episode of Ozark. And it was not what I was expecting. Cards on the table here. And the Birds enter the birdhouse. And we pretty quickly notice some broken glass. Mal Satin is broken in, and he's sitting in their backyard waiting for them. He's found himself unable to function as a police officer because he couldn't stop thinking about the Birds. He came back for the goat cookie jar containing Ben's ashes. This is hard evidence against the Birds. Wendy and Marty try to negotiate, but Mel isn't having any of it. He's going to do the right thing this time. Jonah and Charlotte come out, and Jonah is once again wielding that shotgun. Marty kind of looks at Jonah and gives him a slight nod and looks back at Wendy, and we cut to black. And as that cut to black happens, we hear a gunshot. And that's the end of Ozark.
Yeah, man. Well, this is, I guess, let's start with some of the positives. Cool callback with Jonah. This dates all the way back to his time with Buddy. He's pointed the gun at several people, and everything. We got that, Helen. Yep. Well, Buddy pointed it at Helen. He's had a history with this shotgun, so it was cool to see that come to fruition. I personally enjoyed, and in no way, shape, or form am I condoning killing anyone or a parent being happy that their kid is doing. I enjoyed Marty's slight look of pride on his face as he smirked at Jonah and gave him a little nod. as he realized that Jonah was there to save the family. That they've come so far that at this point they've been through so much and they got everything they want, and the kids are the one that are actually making the final save. That felt kind of cool.
And it's been a minute, but I feel like when Jonah had that first time and he had the shotgun and he didn't pull the trigger, I feel like Marty wasn't there. It was Wendy, right? And he looked at her and like she didn't give him, like she shook her head like negatively or something, just very ever so slightly. But this time you see he looks at Marty and it's like, if you're watching on YouTube, you know, like it's just like the slightest, like it's almost like your head would move when you're talking, almost a natural head bob. But I think it's
there's a slight smirk.
Yeah,
there's just a little happy
and then
face.
He looks at Wendy like almost like not for permission, because that's kind of funny, right? Because Marty finally made a decision without Wendy, and it's giving Jonah the go ahead to kill this guy who's currently a cop, mind you. He's a cop right now, unless maybe he resigned, but still, he's a cop who just resigned in theory like a day ago. You have to. I don't know if they can just disappear him that easy.
Well, and they're the ones who got him his job.
Wouldn't we have told Maya Miller again? We don't ever see Maya Miller again. We don't see Frank Jr. again. We don't see Sheriff Guerrero again. Just for a season finale, for a series finale, especially. Are you kidding me? There's some questions here, and I think it's an interesting choice to wrap the whole thing up with Mel Sat.
Yeah, that is faux show. I will say this, and then we'll get to some of the negatives. I do think the show did a great job illustrating that there are really bad people that are super duper powerful, and they can get away with basically anything because they have money and power. And the show did a great job staying true to that. And at one point when the show started, it was the cartel, and now it's the birds, right? In terms of having that money and that power and being terrible, doing anything and getting away with it. It used to be just the cartel on the show, but now it's the birds literally have that power and money, and they can get away with anything. They did a great job demonstrating that.
It's a kind of a literal shot too, because Wendy, we know, worked on Barack Obama's campaign, and Mel compares them to the Koch brothers, very famously libertarian, right wing, some of the biggest donors in modern political history. And Mel is lumping Wendy Bird in with those people who she would probably view as her mortal enemies. He talks about them, whatever kind of royalty you think you are, or whatever. Mel I think he's pretty righteous here. I just think he's fucking stupid for going at it this way.
And I'm satisfied with the Jonah scene with the cut to black and we hear the gunshot.
I just don't like that he's shooting Mel Satin here. I don't mind with ending with Jonah. I don't even mind the cut to black on the gunshot to make it somewhat ambiguous. Like, I guarantee there's somebody out there arguing that Mel Satin had a gun and he's like secretly drew on Jonah and shot him or something. Because you can argue what you want. That's the point of the ambiguous ending. I think there's a way to get Jonah to a better place where like he's shooting Camille or something, or I don't know. I feel there's a better way that can end in the same thing, but just would have satisfied me more.
Yeah, bringing Mel Satin back on this is just, it's pretty absurd. And let's just talk about it for a second, Magnum Mills, because I'm just going to go right into it. Dude, if somebody shatters your sliding glass door, like floor to ceiling door, and breaks in your house and steals something, I'm not so sure that's going to stand up in a court of law. I would just call the police right then and there. Like, come on, dude, are you kidding me?
The chain of evidence has already been broken.
Why
you can, in theory, like commit a crime because backdoor it into court that way, because even though they obtained it illegally, if they were arrested in the proper way. But yeah, the birds, again, kings of the Midwest now, they have access to whatever lawyer they want, more or less, judges as well, I would assume, because you have to figure now they have control. A guy like Charles Wilkes is going to come back around and start groveling to them again, right? They're going to have access to everything they need. I don't think that Mel has a convincing case, put it that way. I think killing him here is an overreaction, I would say.
And here's the other thing too. I don't know that there's bone, teeth, hair in there. I mean, I don't know that I don't know that it's that bad and outdated. They've been able to get rid of a lot.
I would buy that because they bought those businesses to launder money. They didn't really invest anything in them. Like, yeah, Marty would try to make it more profitable, but he'd probably make it more profitable by making them burn more bodies more quickly, which would wear it down more in theory. I don't think they were worried about, investing for the future of the crematorium.
No,
really, it takes one.
They've been able to get rid of.
That's where they get the DNA. Basically, I think would be from drilling into the tooth. as far as when you're doing that.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is they have successfully used the crematory as a plot line to successfully get rid of bodies, and there's never been a mention of any risk of it not doing the job.
Yeah,
so that was
it's
a bit
odd that they brought it up in the way they did. And I'm trying to remember, did we explicitly know that Ben's ashes were in there? I think we did.
I think we did. Like, it was pretty much implied.
I think,
like Ruth put them in
they,
there.
I think they were given to Ruth. Ruth got them, and then she found that, right? And then it reminded her of Ben, so she put them in there.
Jonah gave them to Ruth.
Jonah gave the ashes to Ruth, but Ruth found the goat thing. So that's how.
Yeah,
it's
because
not like,
he wanted to go raise
right.
goats.
So just a little bit of a reminder there. And I give Mel credit. It makes sense the way he lays it out about how, like, oh, why did Ruth have it? And there's no cookies, because he asked that about when he goes to Ruth's trailer. He's like, oh, can I get a cookie out of the jar? And then he sees it again at the hotel, and he connects the dots. Ruth even tells him, oh, Ben wanted to raise goats. I get that, but breaking into the bird's house to get it, like, how did he even know it was there? It was at the hotel.
Exactly.
It was at the Lazy O last time he saw it. It surface level, I get it, but if you really start thinking about it, it just doesn't make a lot of sense or seem, very practical.
Yeah, and like they just cave immediately. We'll pay you off. Like, at that point, what if he was recording it? Like, I mean, that's so ridiculous. And Marty just immediately like, we'll pay you off. Like, they're really that worried about it. Like, I would just be like, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not,
yeah,
you
like,
just broke in our house.
We get like 8 forensic experts that'll testify that this is like actual cookie dough or something. Who knows?
Yeah,
like, we'll pay him. We have the dough. We have the power at this point.
Interesting choice. What do you think they were thinking here, Magnum Mills? Because
I think the writers thought like this was going to be a big thing. Like, when Mel lays out how he knew it was a cookie jar, I think they had an aha moment. Like, that's what the writers thought. Like, oh, everyone's going to be like, oh, snap, this is why Mel Satton's important. And look at how he followed the breadcrumbs. It did not play that way to me. It just, the best reference I can make, I don't know if you've seen Batman versus Superman. At some point, there's a big plot point that revolves around the name Martha. And they thought it was going to be this huge deal, and everyone thought it was fucking stupid as shit, or at least kind of were like, really, that's what you're going to hinge the movie on? This name is going to make the characters change their motivation. And I feel like that's kind of the case here. Like, all of a sudden this was going to flip it around and somehow, I don't know, get us on Mel's side or something. I don't know quite what they were, or just to make it pay off bringing in the character in the first place. It just didn't track for me. I mean, it makes sense that Mel could figure this out, but everything else just doesn't make any sense about why he would go around it this way, especially if he just threw away his last chance of being on the police force to do this. Wouldn't he make sure it was airtight? Wouldn't he use like everything he could do, every favor, like use his resignation in a way to like make sure that sticks?
Well, I will say I did like the exchange between him and Wendy, where he goes, except your money's toxic. And Wendy goes, money doesn't know where it came from.
Oh,
I mean, I think that's as close to this finale comes to kind of an overarching statement for the show, right? I mean, like, that's pretty much what the show is in a way.
Actually, that would be if Game of Thrones style, the birds had like a family crest. Those would be their house words, right? Money doesn't know where it came from. Those would be the birds' house words. And I do feel for Mel a little bit when he's like, I mean, who doesn't ever fill a cookie jar? What's with that? It's not quite people not respecting the cone in the parking spot, but it's kind of close, dude. Like, if you're going to have a cookie jar in a kitchen, there should be cookies in it, I feel. So just saying.
Another thing I wish they would have did where it worked for me for a split second is, again, because I made the stink about the kids abruptly getting out and going in the house first. Then I was thinking, okay, when you came in and you saw the broken glass and they shot it from the angle where you're looking in on the bird's kitchen and dining room from the outside, I thought Camelia's in the house. So they're about to die. All 4 of them are about to die. But then I was let down so much because I see Mel Satton sitting outside. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's what it is. For a split second, I thought maybe we were going to see Wendy pouring herself a glass of wine, Marty sitting at the table. They sit down together. They realize the thing's been broken. And then out comes the kid saying, Dad, and or Mom, and they've got, guns to their heads. And now it's an execution style of the birds. Like, that would have been more satisfying for me. But then we see Mel Satton. I'm like, really? What? Like, that's our guy at the end? Like, really?
I mean, they
teased me for a second and it worked.
They picked that hill to die on, bringing the character in. And that's a little bit of my criticism. We'll get, long-term here in season 4 is they brought in a lot of new characters that had a big impact in the finale here. And I would have appreciated a little bit more if maybe been some characters who had a little bit of a longer run on the show. boy, that about wraps up this scene. I did kind of like it at the beginning when Mel Satin's just sitting there and he explains how they broke into his house, but he's like, oh, I just want to get this guy. I came right back out, sat down here. I didn't want to be intrusive. I did chuckle at that. I thought the actor did a good job. This was back to being cool Mel a little bit, right? Remember, you love the chewing gum Mel and all that shit. He seemed a little bit more like that cool guy here. And I'm not going to lie, for a minute, I thought Mel just might go out and kill Marty and Wendy. Like he shoots Marty, like does like the little, he shoots one of them and then Jonah shoots him or something like that. I thought that was in play because he seemed kind of unhinged. If he's done with the police, he's not getting back with Maya Miller. What does he have to live for? For a minute, I really thought that was going to end in some crazy way. Like you see the birds almost get what they want. They have it all. And then they come home and then randomly they just get got by this one guy because of a cookie jar. That would have been, again, I think a little bit something more interesting for me. And I have to say, I think that the show, I think they thought they fucking nailed this. They go out on Love and Happiness by Al Green. I think they thought like they did this finale and they watched this a bunch of times. They're like, fuck yeah, dude, everyone's going to love this. We haven't graded it yet, but I would say it's very fair to say that the reviews have been mixed.
And I think that's appropriate. You have to basically just accept so much unrealistic. Like I'm okay accepting a handful of things, but dude, every plot line coming to like every single plot line, we basically have to accept some ridiculous, far-fetched thing. And it's been in every episode. Like it's just
the suspension of disbelief got pushed past the breaking point is what happened. There are too many, they asked too many things. They just asked, leap.
And the car accident is top of the, I mean, that's is egregious.
That
all
alone,
the stuff is,
they
the
had zero, that expired all of their credit.
Yes.
Every ounce of credit they had left was gone instantly as soon as Wendy was okay after that car accident and no one's in the hospital. That was it. The show had expended every ounce of credit they had left with me.
I touched at it a little bit earlier. I do like the idea of Jonah closing his eyes and pulling the trigger. Kind of brings the show full circle. I'm satisfied that they went with that as the ending. Just the meat and potatoes around how they got there and it involving Mel just didn't. It feels like Mel wasn't as. They could have went with a character that's been on the show from the beginning. Like it could have been Omar. It could have been any. Like Omar could have actually escaped, came to the bird's house to kill him, and then Jonah has to do. Like it could have been so much better than Mel.
That's great. Realistically, it should have been Ruth probably. Like that would have been the way. I think what they're trying to convey is, the Bird family is like, this is the thing now. They'll stick together. And I guess we're at the point we're about to do the hardware and everything. I just want to say one thing, because they chose this flash forward right at the beginning of the season. And that's kind of how they framed the final season. Like, oh, this car crash. And it was absolutely terrible. I'm definitely disappointed kind of in this final batch of 7 episodes, especially because I think Ozark had gotten better and better season by season. And then we got episode 8, Cousin of Death. I just thought that was my favorite episode of the show. I was really thinking like, man, they are going to slay it the rest of the way in. I don't think that they did so, but I was trying to think, all right, what else could they have done just a touch differently? And one thing I think would have been interesting is if this has been portrayed, like if we start out somewhat in the future, in the Birds, our family, like the Koch brothers or something like that, the Kennedys, they're this huge family. And what Ozark is the origin story of how they became that family. I think that would be more, because this is kind of right. Like, isn't every big family or every great fortune, there's always some big crime at the heart of it? And I think that would have been way more interesting to find out that the Birds are already this big thing and find out like, holy shit, this is actually how they became that powerhouse of the Rust Belt or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, the Better Call Saul.
We find out like we're way ahead. You don't have to do a bunch of future shit, but it's like Jonah's in his 60s or something. He's telling the story to his grandkid or something like that. That kind of thing. Frame it that way, and it's the origin story of this, how the Bird family became the Bird family.
That would have been cool.
I thought that would have been cooler to do it that way, because then they would have made the story part of something bigger. It just feels, for as big a reach as they had, it doesn't make sense, kind of. I don't know the context they ended on. It just feels the scale is off.
Well, by doing that, you kind of lose the chance of, okay, we kind of know that they all live. So you kind of,
you can start out doing it in a vague way, so you don't even know that it's Jonah Bird.
Yeah.
You just do it with an unnamed, and people would, they'd be theorizing or whatever. Nowadays, someone would probably figure it out pretty quickly. I just think that would have been more interesting because I think this is a pretty good origin story.
Yeah.
But I mean, now it gets really interesting, right? I mean, now the Birds are going to have this foundation. The kids are kind of all in. They have the cartel deal. They're laundering. I mean, what's going to happen to the casino now, right? The Birds are probably going to regain control. I'm assuming 3 will have it, the Ruth, and then they'll buy. I think there's different ways they could have framed this where it would have been interesting. I talked about even like say after everything after the car crash never happened. You just see it's like Marty survived, but he's in a coma and this was his dream or something. I don't disagree with anything that happened. It was just not satisfying enough for me. It's like an empty calorie meal.
It definitely wasn't a shake
chocolate cake shake.
That's 100. Yep.
The opposite of that, dude.
Before we go any further down this rabbit hole, Magnum Mills, let's take a look back at the symbols from the opening card and check in on those. What were they again?
I think we've got 3 that we know pretty clearly what they are. First, we have the broken glass. That's obviously from where Mel breaks into the Bird's house in the final scene here. We see a coffee pot, and early in the episode, we see Wendy having coffee in the mental institution and Marty having coffee with Camilla. The third one's a little bit more nebulous. It's some sort of a bow. I called it a bow tie, but it could also be a bow on a dress. You have Marty wearing a bow tie. Charlotte has a bow in the front of her dress, and the fundraiser's a black tie event. I think something in that probably covers it. Final one is we see a charcoal grill, and I think that's from when Ruth has her little vision or whatever of the Langmores, and she sees, Daddy Cade grilling on the barbecue.
Since this was the finale, I guess we should make sure we're keeping it thorough here, keeping it 100, Magnum Mills. And anything else from the finale that you want to discuss, or should we move on to a little hardware time?
Again, I don't want to sound overly negative on the finale. I just think that there were episodes missing. I can't tell if they had 10 episodes, they stretched into 14, or 20 that they tried to cram into 14. And the fact that I can't tell which one of those it is a little bit, it's just kind of muddled here. I think just some of the motivations don't always track. Definitely some of the plot stuff doesn't always line up. I don't mind where the characters ended up. I'm just not, I don't know. I think the journey could have been more fulfilling and satisfying.
Yeah.
Anything on your end?
I couldn't have said it better myself, man. It's just, I'm going to call it what it is, man. I think this finale, this basically the back half of season 4 here, these final 7, I think it was a failure. And while it was good, it was not great. And it definitely, maybe failure is harsh, but I think it was definitely a letdown from what we all anticipated happening, and all the wild, crazy chainsaws juggled in the air. And how is it all? Not one casualty out of the Birds. I don't know, man. It's hard for me to look past
in the future, but I think they basically made 2 mistakes. The obvious one being the whole flash forward with the car accident. That
major mistake, fatal mistake.
Major mistake. And then I think they killed Javi too early, because that basically forced them in. Like they had to create Camilla to just be what Javi was going to be, kind of. And I think she was a good character. It's one of those things where she was kind of the final big bad, so to speak, but she didn't come into the game until 7 episodes left. I would have liked it for Omar or Ruth or even Darlene to have survived. I think it would have been more, again, fulfilling or satisfying to see a character we knew better be the long-term villain. And again, nothing against Camilla. I thought she was written well and everything tracked, and just, we didn't get to know her for that long.
Yeah, tough to have that be the final bad, and then her last scene is just her killing Ruth, and then
you know what? Let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's go talk about our favorite quote, a little bit of dialogue exchange from the episode. The fun one, just because we didn't get to honorable mention here, because I know you won't use it, but when Ruth arrives to the big meeting at the funeral home, and she's like, "Are all the swinging dicks already here?" And Harry's like, "Well, that's not the characterization that I'd offer, but yes." That was a good one. And I have to give it to our girl Ruth. Her final lines.
"I'm not sorry. Your son was a murdering bitch. And now I know where he got it from."
And then after Camilla just keeps pointing the gun at her forever, she's like,
"Well, are you gonna fucking do this shit or what?"
That's how Ruth Langmore goes out. If Ruth Langmore's got to die, that's how she does it. The show fucking nailed that. So shout out for that. Jamie G, favorite line, dialogue, whatnot.
Well said, Magnum Mills. For me, it was hilarious, but also terrifying at the same token. I am going to go with Camellia as she's getting Claire to break, and she tells her,
If I find out later that there's something you aren't telling me now, well, I'll have someone slice you from your cunt to your chin.
I mean, that is like, whoa, dude.
That's
Sea
from
to
bow to
sea.
stern, so to speak. Yeah, from sea to shining sea right there.
Yeah, that is not what you want to hear. And it worked because she broke immediately following that line. It was funny. It was shocking, stunning, all at the same time. And honestly, in an episode where I just could not get past the car accident bullshit, I needed that line. Now it is time for us to choose our favorite moment or scene from the episode. My turn, Magnum Mills. I'm going to go first here, bro. I'm going with the car ride home for Ruth. Ruth was happy. She was smiling. She was tapping her fingers to the beat of Troy on the steering wheel. She literally was in her glory. She was happy. Everything was right. Yeah. I mean, just they reminisce you like this. This was an awesome scene for me. And it was such a cool way to do it because you had this scene where you're like, damn, that's dope. I love the needle track. Ruth happy, smiling, like she just, shit worked out. To then the darkness of the black SUV, Camellia in the black dress, and her dying. I like that scene, man. That was my last like happy Ruth moment. And so I'm going with that scene.
Interestingly enough, I'm going to go with what I kind of viewed as my favorite last Ruth happy moment. And that's the scene where she wakes up. She hears Russ playing the guitar. She goes out. She sees Cade. She eventually makes her way up on the roof with Wyatt. And then 3 eventually comes up and holds hands with her. Just especially knowing how it winds up for Ruth. I think it's just incredibly sad and tragic, but also strikes home. And you get the idea that this is kind of like, if she goes to heaven or whatever, this is what heaven is for her, kind of, right? More or less. Like they're all hanging out, everyone's cool with each other, they're playing some guitar, having some beers, doing some barbecue, sitting on the roof, looking at the lake, just having a good old time as a family. And she loves her name. She's Langmore, right? So that's why I'm going for that one. And I don't know who we're going to pick, but it's time for
Hey, my buddy!
In this, Hey My Buddy, is where we pick our episode MVP. Jamie G, I have to go first on this one. And let me tell you, this was a legitimate struggle because I really wanted to give it up for that version of, I think it's a Honda Odyssey, whatever. Shout out Honda. Apparently they make an unkillable minivan. You just get in that fucking thing and you are undefeated. Really wanted to give it to them. And you can make an argument that everybody except probably even Ruth, you could argue, everyone is, even if it's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory, people have to burn it all down, but they win at all costs. At the end of the day, I probably have to give it to Camellia because she got everything, right? She got all the money stuff. She got the FBI deal and she killed Ruth. And it doesn't appear that there'll be any consequences coming her way. Omar's dead. Wendy Bird might think that she got it all, but Camellia, I think, is the one who actually really did get to have her cake and drink it too. Jamie G, who you got for your buddy of the final episode?
Well, I thought it was fitting, Magnum Mills, that both of our favorite scenes of the series finale involved Ruth. And that's how much, if anybody who's listened to the Ozark podcast knows how much we love Ruth. And I thought really long and hard about giving my buddy to Ruth this episode. Not going to do it. I'm going to make a case for the dude, the guy who it's kind of all about here, and that's Marty Bird. Not only did he win, not only did he keep his family safe, not only did he negotiate this deal with the FBI, not only does he kind of have the FBI and the cartel kind of, in his pocket, so to speak, a little bit. His wife is happy. She has the foundation. But the thing he has that he hasn't had since that very first episode when he was watching Wendy Bird have an affair with another man on his DIY porn on his laptop, right? Like, he's got her love and he's got what seems to be a solid relationship. And what's so crazy about it is this episode, probably more than any, he was pushed to his absolute breaking point with Wendy. Dude, how can he even love her? Like, I can't believe he's even not sleeping on the couch every night. Like, this is terrible. I can't believe he's not living at the Lazy O. But he finally got her back. Something happened and it happened off camera. I don't know, but he has his kids that love and respect him, but he has Wendy. And that's what it was all about for him all along, was his family. And they all came together in the end, and they're a cohesive unit, for better or worse. And he has Wendy's love, at least for right now. And so therefore, Marty Byrde, congrats, man. You did it. You're my MVP. You're my buddy.
You know, wouldn't Jonah Bird maybe be the MVP, because he's going to be so confident after this that he's going to go, and he's going to go right back to, you know, find Ruth and ask her out on a date in, oh, too soon?
Ooh, yeah, that's tough. You're cold, Magnum Mills. He's the coldest. Now it is time for us to find out just how fresh and how clean, so fresh and so clean, this episode of Ozark was. We're going to grade this bad boy on a scale of 0 to 100% clean. How clean is the money for the series finale, A Hard Way to Go? I'm up first here, Magnum Mills. Look, man, we were pretty, not harsh, but we called it like we saw it on this one. And I'm proud of us for sticking true and pointing out the things. Look, we love this show, but it doesn't mean it gets a pass on every single thing. And that's part of our job here on the Ozark Podcast, is to speak the truth for the people. I think I'm going to be fair here. I'm giving this thing what, you know, in some courses in college, I would have been happy with. Other courses I would have been devastated with. I'm giving this a solid 71. That, I think, is just more of a statement about how much I liked this series. This series finale wasn't bad enough for me to hate the series. There are some things that I cannot look past. I will never forgive them for what they did with the fucking van, the accident. It's unforgivable. It's egregious. It's absolutely it's an act of terrorism, for Christ's sakes. It is that bad. They should never have done that. But 71 for me is basically this grade, in my opinion, should be in the 50s or 60s. I bumped it up just because overall the show is really, really good. They had some swings and misses. They struggled down the stretch here a little bit, and the series finale was no way, shape, or form as satisfying as I wanted it to be. 71.
Like you said, the car crash alone is so egregious. Had they not used it as a flash forward to open the season, I would have been a bit more forgiving. But the fact that they did so, like, you're right, it's damn near unforgivable. So that makes me want to say, like, the episode has to start out at like a 50. Like, you're already halfway down, build its way up from there. I want to give the episode a lot of credit because, again, I think Bateman did a good job directing. I think all the actors are doing good work. I think the dialogue pops, just the plotting. Again, I think this is one of those shows that we're going to look back on and hear about some stuff that happened, whether it was because of COVID or other reasons. Something happened here where stuff got eliminated or added. It just doesn't make sense. But I can't go. The car crash thing alone is just, I'm not going to get past that. It is what it is. So this is an episode, one of my least favorite of the show, maybe my least favorite, but still, there was light in it. So I got to go with 69, dude.
69, dudes.
I wanted it to be better. I think it could have been better. I'm not terribly satisfied, but I'm not mad at the choices they made. I'm just mad at the roads that they chose to drive down to get to where they arrived at. You know, the end doesn't always justify the means. The destination in a show like this, though, is always about the journey. And I think the end here, you know, it feels a little bit Game of Thronesy here, where the logic didn't quite apply at the end and stuff just started happening because people thought it would be interesting or because it needed to from a plot standpoint. And just look at how we ended some of the final episodes, all like Marty and Wendy getting arrested, Wendy banging her head on the window, the car act. None of this really mattered in the long run. And I think we just had too many moments that were meant to look climactic that wound up being nothing burgers. And I have to finally penalize the show for that. So 69, dude. And I'll go with 6.9 car crashes. Fuck clean.
6.9 flips, bro.
Yeah,
6.9 flips.
You know, if it was flips, I'd have to give it 6.5. So you're okay. I'm going with car crashes and not flips because you'd lose the 0.4 on that.
Yeah, Mills. Look, man, I'm curious if we feel differently about the ending after we've had a while to think about it. It's still ultra fresh for us. Thank you again for checking out the Ozark podcast. This has been a ton of fun. Enjoyed every moment of it. We will be back in a week or two with some thoughts on season 4, and I'm sure we'll probably follow up with an overall arching series thoughts episode as well. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment. Helps us out so much. Mills, he's gonna be the dude that's gonna tell everybody where they can find the rest of our stuff that's absolutely free and definitely shit you should check out.
All right, so let's start out with all of the Ozark fan fiction that we're about to produce, and that might actually happen. But seriously, thank you for listening to the Ozark podcast. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. We can find us on social media at Ozark Podcast and send your feedback to OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. Again, this is one we'd really like the feedback. If we get enough, we would love to do a feedback episode. So send it in, ideally on the show. But if you want to critique us, knock yourself out. Just do not say anything bad about cakes that you can drink in the form of a shake. We will not tolerate that. We're from the Joe Blow Football Show, who you can find at joeblowfootballshow.com and on social media at Joe Blow Show. We are currently covering the final season of Better Call Saul on our show, Saul Over Soon. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at Saul Over Soon. Also covering Barry. You could call it the NoHo Hank Show, but we call it Barry because HBO does. And we are the Barry Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at Barry Podcast. And like Rockefeller Records, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, covering It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on The Night Pod Cometh. Search for us on your favorite podcast platform at Night Pod Cometh. Same thing on social media. It's been a ride, man. This was a show, I think. And I just want to say thanks again for checking us out. I'm Magnum Mills. He's Jamie G. This has been the Ozark Podcast presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We'll see you soon when we wrap up season 4, but until then, you only need to remember 2 things. First, keep cookies in your cookie jar.
And Jonah Bird is the word. Jonah Bird. Bird is the word. See you next time. This has been the Ozark Podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We are not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Ozark, MRC, Aggregate Films, or Netflix. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Any views or opinions expressed here are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations who may or may not be associated with the Joe Blow Football Show. If you have any questions, please contact us at OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. That's OzarkPodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Dude, now all of a sudden, I watched that video. I really want a Portillo's chocolate cake shake.
Dude, I am not Mr. Chocolate, but that I was like,
me neither. But that looked.
Then did you see
good.
to the part where the dude's sitting there? He's got the shake and a beer.
Yeah.
Like, dude, my stomach just looking at that was like, no, do beer and chocolate cake. No, do beer and chocolate cake.
Yeah, no, that's a threesome I don't want, dude. That is a.
Yeah, you do the 2 drinks in the fucking turlet.
Yep, that's where you'd be, dude.